A young man, Orrin Edwards, sits alone inside a rattling train car, gazing out the window as the landscape rushes past. He is clad in his familiar cloak, a solitary figure on a journey to a new destination. The rhythmic clatter ceases as the train pulls into a station. With a firm step, he disembarks onto the stone platform, the journey by rail now complete. He pauses for a moment, a faint, wistful smile touching his lips as he takes in the new surroundings. The feeling of the place, he realizes, is somehow nostalgic. Standing on a seaside promenade, he lets the wind whip his cloak around him. The sea breeze, he thinks, is a pleasant and welcome sensation. His destination is a remote one. The kingdom of Estrada, a small country nestled beyond a rugged mountain range at the southernmost tip of the Dome continent, a place sometimes called the Land at the End. As he walks through the town, a sudden sound or presence makes him halt in his tracks, his senses instantly on alert. Just moments before, he had been admiring the tranquil beauty of the town, its stone bridges arching over serene canals. It had been a long time since he had experienced such a peaceful moment. The source of the disturbance is a young man who approaches him from behind, his tone casual but probing. He asks if Orrin is from out of town and what brings him to such a remote place. Turning to face him, Orrin confirms he is a visitor, stating he comes from Giadis. He then clarifies his purpose for being there, explaining calmly that he has quit his position at a school and has come to Estrada for work. He walks through a bustling port town, observing the thriving fisheries that make great use of Estrada's coastal location. For someone currently unemployed, he muses, even the life of a fisherman seems appealing. However, fishing is not his goal. He reminds himself that the real reason he came to this land was to meet the king, who had once given him a certain request. With a flash of light, he uses storage magic to stow his bag. He inwardly scolds himself for his bad habit of spending money rashly, realizing he took yet another detour before even reaching the capital. His detour has left him in a predicament. He would take the train again, but he is completely out of funds. He stands there, wondering what he should do now. Amidst the chatter of the town, his eyes are drawn to a sign hanging above a doorway, marked with a stylized, dragon-like emblem. He recognizes it instantly, an adventurer's guild. He thinks about the life of an adventurer, fighting monsters, finding treasure, and admits to himself that he has always admired that kind of life. The timing feels perfect. Realizing that if he completes a few quests, he might be able to secure some short-term funds, he decides he might as well take a look inside. The door swings open to reveal the guild's interior, where various patrons sit at wooden tables, drinking and conversing. He steps inside, walking past the seated adventurers as he makes his way further into the establishment. As he approaches the reception desk, a young woman with a pleasant smile stops him. She holds out a booklet, informing him that first-timers are required to read the instruction manual. Much to his surprise, he begins to read through the guild's manual, learning that one must acquire a license to take on quests. As he mulls over the seemingly simple tasks, a man with a condescending grin approaches, mockingly asking if he can even read. The man leans back in his chair, sizing Orrin up. Noting that he doesn't recognize him, he surmises Orrin is from out of town and dismissively calls him an old rookie. With a sharp metallic sound, the thug draws a knife. He declares his intent to teach Orrin the rules of this town, causing the nearby receptionist to look on in fear. He presses the blade against Orrin's back, demanding he leave all his cash for the registration fee. Orrin remains silent and still, his expression unreadable, while the receptionist is frozen in terror. Unfazed by the threat, he glances back over his shoulder. His voice is steady as he calmly asks the thug what he thinks he is trying to pull. The thug leans in closer, his voice a low growl. He warns Orrin that the second he tries to draw a weapon of his own, it will be over. In response to the threat, an immense, unseen pressure suddenly slams the thug down, forcing him to his knees. He struggles, realizing with dawning horror that he cannot move. Orrin looks down at him, unimpressed, asking if this is all he's got after so much talk. As the thug curses him, still pinned to the floor, Orrin calmly critiques his failed attack. He notes that the man's step-in was weak, awarding him a mere 15 points. With a swift, fluid motion, he pivots and drives his elbow into the back of the thug's head, who can only let out a choked cry of pain. The single blow renders the thug instantly unconscious, his body slumping to the floor. Orrin looks down at the defeated man, remarking internally on his disappointment that such a low-level attack was enough to end the fight. The onlookers murmur in disbelief, shocked that the thug, Dritton, was taken out with a single blow. They wonder about the identity of this powerful newcomer, while Orrin himself internally questions how such a person could have survived as an adventurer for any length of time. The commotion attracts unwanted attention as a knight captain bursts through the doorway, flanked by his men, demanding to know the cause of the disturbance. His eyes land on the scene. The defeated thug lies crumpled against a wall that is cracked from the impact of the blow, with Orrin standing calmly nearby. The guild receptionist approaches, sighing that the situation has become annoying. She looks towards Orrin, asking if he was responsible and demanding an explanation. Before he can respond, the receptionist speaks up from behind her counter, telling the knight to give Orrin a break and explaining that he was merely being harassed. The captain cuts her off, declaring that he will take over the situation. One of his subordinates tries to report that he was already questioning the man, but the captain's focus is solely on resolving the commotion. Amidst the tension, Oren's expression changes to one of recognition. He addresses one of the knights as Grover, noting that it has been a long time. The knight, Grover Hurston, is utterly shocked to see his former professor. The other knights react with confusion, realizing their captain addressed the newcomer by name. The realization ripples through the knights, one of them exclaiming in awe, "The sage?" Oren, however, appears uncomfortable with the title, humbly stating that he is not that important. Two other knights begin to speak amongst themselves, connecting the dots. One identifies him as Oren Edwards, their own captain's former mentor. The other recalls the name, recognizing him as the famed leader of the Golden Generation. Overcome with emotion, Grover Hurston steps forward, expressing his joy at seeing his mentor again, something he never expected in a place like this. His tone then shifts as he admits that things haven't been going well, prompting a concerned Oren to ask what he means. He calmly clarifies his intentions to the stunned knight. Oren explains that he has retired from teaching and is considering relocating to this country. His former student, Grover, is overcome with joy at the prospect, declaring it wonderful news for the citizens of Estrada. Grover's enthusiastic outburst is quickly followed by an apology for his lack of composure. Oren, however, dismisses it with a small smile, noting that it was simply an honest reaction. The young knight remains flustered, muttering his own name in a moment of self-reproach. As Grover collects himself, Captain Haig approaches Oren, apologizing for the trouble. He assures Oren not to worry, confirming that guild members testified that the thug, Dritten, was the one who drew his weapon first. With the matter settled, Oren turns his attention back to his former student, remarking on how impressively strong he has become. Grover, however, is still troubled. He confesses he cannot understand why the Geodis Academy would let someone like Oren go, adding that there is something unsettling happening at the academy and within the country itself. Leaning in, the young knight voices his primary suspicion, asking Oren directly if he believes the new headmaster is the source of the problem. With a grim and serious expression, Oren confirms that it is probably the case. The institution at the center of this growing unease is the Geodis Royal Magic Sword Academy. The academy is a grand and imposing structure, known as one of the most elite training institutions on the entire continent. It is a school designed specifically to forge the nation's future leaders. For Oren, this prestigious institution was also his former workplace, a place of teaching and mentorship. A memory surfaces of his time there, students eagerly approaching him in the halls, addressing him as Professor Oren. One young man requests a sparring match, while a young woman asks to pose a question. To both, he calmly agrees, a testament to his approachable nature as a teacher. He recalled his time as a professor, a period he remembered as smooth sailing. That peaceful memory was cut short when an aide approached him. "Professor Oren," the man said, "the headmaster is calling for you." He was brought before Headmistress Rose Arnelord. With a severe expression, she addressed him by his full name, Oren Edwards. "You know why you've been called here, don't you?" Standing alone before her in the vast, ornate hall, Oren confessed that he had no idea at all. The headmistress repeated his name, her tone sharp, feigning disbelief at his response. Her composure broke. "You can't even figure out something so simple," she scoffed. "To think someone known as a sage could be so incompetent. How disappointing." Despite the insult, he remained poised. "I apologize," he stated calmly. "Then please, enlighten this fool as to why I've been summoned here." The headmistress leaned in, her eyes narrowed with accusation. "You're here to explain how you've mistreated my son, Kyle." The name caught Oren by surprise, his expression shifting slightly as he processed the charge. His mind flashed back 3 months prior, when a troublemaker named Kyle Arnelord joined his class. He recalled the headmistress introducing her son, trusting Oren to treat him well. Oren had wondered why a student with honors would be placed with him, remembering that Kyle's late father, the headmistress's husband, was an unquestionable hero who had won the war. He continued his reflection, realizing the headmistress desperately wanted Kyle to become a hero like his late father. She likely hoped he would rise to the top of the Royal Knights. But with the war over, the path to heroism was gone. To achieve that status now, Kyle would need top grades, no matter what. Faced with this reality and his own principles, Oren made his decision. He gave Kyle the lowest possible marks. He continues to explain his reasoning, stating that before anyone can be entrusted as a true knight, they must first develop the proper skill and knowledge. His expression is firm, rooted in conviction. His conviction comes from experience. He recalls that he used to serve in the Royal Knights before becoming a teacher, so he understands the stakes well. To place someone so clearly lacking as a captain would endanger the entire unit, a grim reality visualized by a lone, bloodied figure standing on a battlefield littered with the swords of the fallen. This memory solidifies his stance. As someone entrusted to guide the youth, this is the one principle he refuses to compromise on. He sits at his desk, a solitary figure resolved in his duty. Returning to the present confrontation, he calmly tells the headmistress that his judgment of her son's conduct as a knight was a fair assessment. His steadfastness only fuels her anger. Headmistress Arnelord declares that his evaluation standards mean nothing. Her voice rises with indignation as she insists there is no reason her son, Kyle, shouldn't receive top marks. He bluntly rejects her premise. He tells her that this kind of parental love crosses into the absurd. Looking her straight in the eyes, he states that if she truly cares for her son, then now is the time for strict grading and discipline, not favoritism. Headmistress Arnalord's lips curl into a thin, dismissive line. With a soft humph, she concedes, stating that if he is that insistent, then so be it. She continues, holding up a formal document. If he cannot acknowledge the potential of a student named Kyle, she declares, then he is to leave the academy at once. A calm, unwavering voice responds from just out of view, agreeing to her terms with a simple, very well. The voice belongs to Orrin Edwards. He stands before the headmistress, his expression resolute. He accepts her ultimatum, stating that if that is how she feels, he will step down. He then formally announces his retirement, effective that day, leaving the headmistress momentarily stunned and asking what he just said. Her composure shatters. Realizing he is serious, she slams her hand down with enough force to crack the surface beneath it. Her face contorts with fury as she screams at him, calling him an eyesore and demanding he get out of her sight. In the distance, Orrin is already walking away. As he makes his way out, Kyle Arnalord intercepts him, calling him a fool. Kyle asserts that his grade was a fair assessment, and smugly admits he thought Orrin would cave to his mother's demands, revealing his connection to the headmistress. He ends with a sneer, expressing his disdain for ex-night hard-ass instructors like Orrin. He continues his taunts, tapping his own temple. He mockingly asks if Orrin's brain is also made of muscle and questions why he can't try to live a little smarter. Leaning closer with a condescending smirk, he jeers that being unemployed at Orrin's age must be difficult, though he sarcastically adds that there is plenty of work out there. As Orrin continues to walk away, without a word, Kyle shouts at his back, telling him to stop acting tough and warning him that he will regret his decision in a big way. He watches Orrin's retreating form and yells one last insult. Loser. The scene then pulls back, revealing this entire confrontation was a story from the past. Orrin had not only left the academy, but the kingdom of Giadis as well. His listener, the young knight, Grover Hurston, looks on in astonishment, asking if all of that really happened. He insists that the offer of a carriage ride to the capital is nothing compared to the gratitude he owes Orrin. Though feeling a bit guilty, Orrin accepts, acknowledging he is tired from his long journey. As they stand on the paved grounds of the academy, Orrin looks back, remarking that while he never got to say a proper goodbye to his students, he is confident in their capabilities. He internally admits, however, that there is one particular girl he worries about, someone he knew even before she enrolled in the academy. His train of thought is shattered by a desperate cry. A young woman's voice calls out, "Professor Orrin." He turns in surprise, recognizing his student, Patricia Grayson. Breathless, she announces that she has finally found him. She immediately questions him, asking if he truly left the academy and why he is there, about to depart. Ignoring his unspoken questions, she pleads to accompany him, promising she won't be a burden and declaring that an academy without him holds no meaning for her. He asks for her reasoning, and Patricia explains that because of his guidance, she has become strong enough to protect herself. Despite her passionate words, Orrin quietly tells her that she needs to go back. He urges her to listen, insisting it's not too late for her to return. He explains that she is one of the most gifted students he has ever taught, and for that very reason, he cannot stand in the way of her bright future. Her plea is filled with memories. She recalls how Orrin, during his time with the Knights, saved her from being sold to criminals. She tearfully recounts how he told her to call him Big Brother and continue to visit her even after she was sent to an orphanage. She insists she has yet to repay her debt and begs to stay by his side, especially now that he is struggling. Her face lights up with pure joy. Nearby, Grover Hurston remarks to Orrin that Patricia seems truly resolved in her decision. Orrin internally agrees, acknowledging that she has always been stubborn. He reflects that he has always thought of her as a little sister, even before he became a teacher, which is why she's always on his mind. Sighing in resignation, he relents, telling her simply to be careful. Patricia enthusiastically agrees. As they begin their journey by carriage, she eagerly looks out the window and starts to ask Orrin a question. He interrupts, cautioning her not to lean too far out, lest she fall. She turns back with a hint of annoyance, asking if he is treating her like a child. Orrin looks away, thinking to himself that from his perspective, people her age are still just children. Her irritation vanishes as she quickly dismisses her own question, claiming it was nothing. Orrin finds her sudden change in demeanor troubling and asks what she means by that. He watches as she turns back to the window, her face filled with wonder at the passing scenery. He muses that girls her age can be difficult to understand, but acknowledges that she is quite mature for her age. Still, he feels a sense of relief seeing her act like a child for once. The quiet moment is broken when Grover Hurston clears his throat, steering the conversation back to their purpose. He asks Orrin directly if he heard correctly that Orrin is hoping to meet with the king. He presses on, speculating about Orrin's intentions. He asks if Orrin is seeking a ministerial post as a sage, or perhaps if he intends to establish a new academy and become its headmaster, telling him to slow down. In response to the knight's concern, Orrin clarifies that sage was merely a nickname given to him by his colleagues at the academy and was never an official title. He then reveals his true reason. He remembered that the king had once asked him to investigate a certain island. The explanation catches Grover by surprise. He repeats the word island questioningly, a note of apprehension entering his voice as he begins to ask for clarification. He confirms that it is indeed the island he was asked to investigate. Hearing this, Patricia whips around from the window, her expression shifting to one of alarm. She asks with dread if he means that specific place. As her fear lingered from the revelation, Oren's voice cut through, identifying the ominous, crescent-shaped landmass as Roche Island. He elaborated that while it wasn't far from Estrada's royal capital, the frequent, violent storms that plagued its vicinity had earned it a more sinister name, the Island of Calamity. He then explained to Grover Hurston that he had previously declined the king's request due to being overwhelmed with teaching duties, but now wished to accept the mission. Grover expressed his concern, reminding Oren that the island is shrouded in mystery and that every survey team sent there has failed. This only strengthened Oren's resolve. He declared that was precisely why he needed to uncover the truth. Hearing his determination, Patricia called out, volunteering to help. He turned to her with a knowing smile, conceding that she would likely follow him even if he refused. With a simple all right, he accepted her offer. Her face lit up with a determined yes, sir, as he formally welcomed her to the mission, telling her that he was counting on her. Their journey soon brought them to the grand gates of Estrada's royal capital. The guards on duty, James and Haig, reacted with stunned disbelief, recognizing their visitor as Lord Oren, the sage of Geodis. He greeted the two knights warmly, addressing them by name, much to their surprise. He then instructed them to inform His Majesty that Professor Oren was here and would want to see him immediately. Moments later, inside the castle, Oren, Patricia, and Grover knelt respectfully. As they waited, Oren quietly remarked that the two guards, James and Haig, seemed to be doing well. From the throne before them, a voice responded. King Estrada agreed that it had indeed been a while, addressing him formally as Oren Edwards. The king continued, explaining that Oren's past efforts had left a lasting impression. He recalled how Oren had served as a vital bridge between the nations of Estrada and Geodis, and that his passion for the student exchange was particularly memorable for a country as isolated as their own. He stands before the throne, expressing his honor, but feeling unworthy of the king's praise. From his seat, King Estrada states that he has been looking forward to this reunion. The king observes that Oren seems to have faced many hardships in Geodis. Oren concedes that events concluded in unexpected ways, but now that he is free, there are new goals he can finally pursue. Cutting straight to the matter, the king states that Oren must be here about Roche Island. The young sage can only utter the king's title in surprise. He explains his reasoning, reminding Oren that when they last spoke of the island, Oren became unusually excited. The king correctly surmises that this is precisely why Oren came to see him immediately following his retirement. With the matter seemingly settled in his mind, the king turns and calls out an order to prepare a ship immediately. A nearby knight, Grover Hurston, snaps to attention and confirms the command. As the order is given, Patricia turns to Oren, asking if he is truly okay with this sudden development. The king interjects, stating there is no issue at all. In fact, he declares that Oren is the only one he can entrust with the survey and development of the island, asking for confirmation that he can count on him. His resolve firm, Oren looks directly at the king and confirms, of course. He formally accepts the task, his mission now set. He is ready to depart. With his new purpose clear, the retired sage makes a silent vow. He will uncover the truth behind Roche Island. 3 days after the audience with King Estrada, the journey begins. Aboard a small boat cutting through the waves, Oren, Patricia, and the knight Grover Hurston set out across the open sea. The time, Oren reflects, has finally come. Standing at the bow, Oren gazes toward the horizon with a faint smile. He shares his companion's unspoken excitement, thinking to himself that he is looking forward to reaching the mysterious Roche Island. Their vessel continues its steady advance across the vast, sunlit waters. Grover Hurston turns to his companions, offering a piece of information. He estimates that it will take them about an hour to reach their destination. Oren observes their progress, remarking on the ship's high performance. He notes that thanks to the magic or powering it, the boat maintains a remarkably stable speed. Suddenly, Patricia's attention is captured by something ahead. She calls out urgently to Oren, whom she addresses as Professor, and points toward the distance. Her finger indicates a strange phenomenon on the water's surface. A distinct path seems to have materialized from waves. Grover Hurston calmly provides an explanation for the sight. He informs them that the path only appears when the tide is low. Oren listens, absorbing the new detail. He immediately grasps the implication. If one knew the precise timing of its appearance, it would be possible to travel from the island to the capital without a ship at all. He looked toward the approaching shore, a smile spreading across his face. Patricia suggested that once they were settled, they could bring horses from the capital. Oren agreed, his excitement for their new life growing as he announced he could finally see the island. As the dense line of palm trees became clear, a voice joyfully exclaimed, "We've arrived." The confirmation brought bright expressions to both Oren and Patricia's faces as they stood at the bow of the boat, gazing at their new home. Moments later, Oren's boots touched the sandy shore. He stood alone for a moment, taking in the tropical landscape as Patricia and Grover Hurston managed their arrival behind him. He turned to the young knight, apologizing for having him arrange so much. Grover, however, quickly dismissed the apology, stating it was no trouble at all and that he would do anything for Orin and his junior. The knight then expressed his regret, wishing he could assist with the upcoming investigation. However, he acknowledged that his primary task was to protect the people. Orin understood, telling Grover he appreciated the thought. Grover's expression hardened with resolve. He affirmed that he would remain ready to rush over if anything were to happen, punctuating his vow with a sharp, "Yes, sir." In response, Orin offered a reassuring smile, letting the young knight know, "I'm counting on you." Yet, as they began their new life, the shadows of the past lingered. The corruption within the Academy's upper management and Professor Orin's unjust dismissal were unresolved issues that weighed on their minds. This injustice troubled Grover deeply. He stared out at the horizon, lamenting that they couldn't let it go on, but felt powerless, having already left the country. It was a frustration that Orin, watching him, seemed to understand all too well. Having left the others behind, Orin rows a small boat across the calm sea toward Roche Island, reflecting on his hope that events will now move in a better direction. Now on shore with Patricia, he unfurls a map provided by the king. He explains their initial plan, to follow the map to a mansion supposedly built on the island for visitors. The map he holds is simple, showing the coastline and a large brushed X marking a spot inland. He looks over at Patricia, whose expression is filled with doubt. With a reassuring smile, Orin admits that this map is all they have to rely on, so they have no choice but to believe in it. His finger traces a path on the map as he declares their route northwest. He warns that they are entering unexplored lands, which may be home to vicious, man-eating plants and other monsters. She responds with a firm, "Yes, sir." Understanding the danger, Orin tells her to stay sharp as they proceed toward the dense tree-line. With that, they venture into the dense forest. Orin leads the way, his cloak billowing slightly as they navigate the thick undergrowth. As they proceed, Patricia observes that there appears to be a mountain with a high elevation nearby, and possibly dungeons as well. Hearing this, Orin's expression shifts to one of keen interest, remarking that this investigation looks to be more worthwhile than he first thought. Her survey of the landscape is cut short as she spots something ahead. "Professor, look at this," she calls out, pointing toward a clearly defined path worn into the forest floor. He confirms that he saw it as well. Patricia muses that it must be a path leading to the island's center, but Orin offers a different theory. He wonders aloud if it could be an ancient trail left by someone who landed here during the last king's era. He examines the path, noting that the cut marks on nearby branches look fresh. Patricia asks why he believes the path was made recently. She looks on thoughtfully, adding her own observation that the signs of passage do not seem to be from years ago. Their attention is drawn to the ground, where faded but still visible footprints mark the dirt path. Kneeling to inspect the tracks, Orin confirms that her deduction is correct. Someone was here very recently. Patricia wonders if it could be natives of the island, a possibility Orin acknowledges. She then offers another theory, suggesting they might be survivors from shipwreck, as the area is known to have frequent major storms. He rises, concluding that either way, they must investigate further as they continue along the path. He urges that they hurry to find the mansion, explaining that if someone is hiding on the island, they should avoid sleeping outdoors. With a crisp salute, Patricia agrees enthusiastically. Orin gently tells her there is no need to be so formal, as they are no longer at the academy. Flustered but relieved, Patricia asks if she may change how she addresses him. He glances back at her, suggesting she call him Big Brother, just as she did in the past. The thought brings a nostalgic look to his face as he continues walking, remarking that it brings back memories of when she used to call him that at the orphanage. He agrees with Patricia, admitting that being called Big Brother would be awkward for him as well, especially now that he's older. Her face falls slightly at his words. She immediately protests, her eyes wide with surprise, questioning why it would be awkward. With conviction, she declares that, to her, he will always be Professor. As they continue their journey through the woods, it is settled. Though Patricia suggested several other names, none of them felt quite right, and in the end, she returned to calling him Professor. The path takes them deeper into the island's dense, overgrown foliage. With Patricia following close behind, Orin carefully leads the way across a makeshift bridge formed by a large, fallen log spanning a shallow creek. Emerging into a clearing, Orin announces that they have finally arrived. Patricia, looking around, remarks that the trek took longer than she had expected. Before them stands a dilapidated, timber-framed building. Patricia observes that it looks more like a hut than a mansion. Orin remains optimistic, noting that it's better than sleeping outside and appears to have at least 2 rooms. As the sun dips below the horizon, Orin decides they will spend the night in the shelter. Patricia readily agrees. Inside, Orin cautions Patricia to watch her step, pointing out that part of the floor has collapsed. But the warning comes too late. As she steps forward, the rotten floorboards give way beneath her with a sharp crack, and she lets out a cry of alarm. Having fallen through she lands amidst the splintered wood, but Orin is there in an instant, taking her hand and pulling her to safety. He asks if she is hurt. She stammers that she is fine, but he internally berates himself for the blunder. He had thought he was managing his own weight well enough to avoid such a collapse. His gaze then falls upon a bed in the corner. He reasons that if the floorboards gave way so easily under Patricia, they must be in truly awful condition. Yet, a detail catches his eye. The bed looks strangely clean. Shaking off the thought, he urges her to move on. She quickly agrees, though her expression is flustered. The same contradiction occupies her thoughts. Despite the rotten floor, the bed remains pristine. She realizes she has spoken her thoughts aloud, adding to her embarrassment. He moves closer to inspect the bed. He observes that its construction is rough, as if it were assembled in a hurry. This detail only strengthens his suspicion that the place is worth investigating. It seems increasingly likely that someone else arrived here not long ago. Putting the investigation aside for the moment, he turns to Patricia and offers her the bed for the night. Startled, she protests, but then, with a hopeful expression, she suggests they could share it. Her face flushes a deep red as she stammers in agreement. He gently turns down her offer, explaining that the bed is probably too small for two people, though he appreciates the sentiment. He watches her fidget, her gaze cast downward, and understands her reaction. She must feel guilty about the prospect of sleeping in the bed by herself while he goes without. Despite the initial troubles, they manage to secure a safe place to sleep. They settled in for the night, resting early to prepare for the day to come. Under a sky dotted with stars, the dark, tree-covered silhouette of Roche Island rests silently in the calm sea. Far away, within the Gyati's Kingdom Knight's dormitory, a letter arrived for the young knight, Grover Hurston. Another knight announces its delivery as he hands it over. Grover accepts it, noting with a hint of nostalgia that it's from his senior, Grover. His calm demeanor shatters as he reads the contents, his eyes widening in shock at the sight of a name, Professor Oren. A young man named Blitz, a holy knight of the Gyat's kingdom, stares at a document in his hands. He reads the words unjust dismissal by the headmistress, and realizes that something felt wrong about Oren Sensei's sudden retirement. The memory of his teacher, his sensei, flashes through his mind with concern. Blitz's thoughts drift back to the past, a time when he was just a boy. He recalls overhearing others remarking that with his weak body, becoming a knight was an impossible dream, and that he would give up on his own if he just observed a training session. As he sat dejectedly, a voice called out to him. It was Oren, asking why he didn't try holding a sword. The young Blitz explained his situation, how his parents said it was impossible due to his weak body. Oren, however, disagreed. He told the boy that he had a knack for it, and that with continued training, becoming a holy knight was not out of reach. He continued his encouragement, admitting that while he couldn't promise success, he was certain that if Blitz kept moving forward, he would undoubtedly gain something valuable from the effort. Inspired, Blitz enrolled at the academy and trained relentlessly under Oren's guidance. His dedication culminated in a remarkable achievement, earning the title of Holy Knight at the youngest age in the kingdom's history. The flashback ends, returning to the present where Blitz stands before Oren, now a full-fledged knight. He proudly reports his success, attributing it all to his teacher. Oren smiles, filled with pride, but corrects him, stating that the accomplishment was due to Blitz's own ability. As he listens, a grim determination settles over Oren's features. He realizes that he has a few things he needs to investigate regarding his dismissal. Meanwhile, Blitz feels a sense of urgency. He understands that he must hurry and inform others who are completely clueless about the current events surrounding Oren. He sits at his desk by a large window and begins to write, determined to spread the word. Meanwhile, in the capital, King Estrada hands a sealed letter to Captain Haig. With a ring of a service bell, the king gives a simple, urgent command: deliver the letter immediately. The captain acknowledges the order without question. Upon glancing at the letter's contents, the captain's eyes widen in recognition. He realizes the subject is from the same golden generation as the holy knight, Blitz. The king confirms his suspicion, stating gravely that this man is indeed one of them. This golden generation refers to a group of classmates from the Royal Magic Sword Academy of Gyat's, hailed as geniuses unparalleled since the kingdom's founding. Each member demonstrates extraordinary talent and serves a vital role. Blitz, the Holy Knight; Jacqueline, the Witch of a Thousand Faces; Elise, the Saintess; and Wendell, the Magical Tool Engineer. The king stresses that the matter is urgent and must be kept confidential. Sensing the gravity of the situation, Captain Haig asks if something serious has occurred, his expression tense. Far away, Oren sits in a well-appointed room, reflecting on recent events. He muses that beginning a frontier expedition right after retiring is exactly the kind of thing he'd expect from the person in question. His new residence is a quaint house nestled amongst dense trees, far from the bustle of the capital. He resolves to act, pulling tight the laces of his boot. He decides that starting today, they will begin a proper survey of the island. Pulling his hood over his head, his face set with purpose, he declares their first objective, to confirm whether there is anyone else on the island besides them. His thoughts turn to the isolated nature of Roche Island. He reasons that if someone is truly living there, they must have noticed the path. The fact that there has been no contact with the capital suggests they might be deliberately avoiding any interaction. Standing before a dense forest with Patricia, Oren warns her to be careful, as the woods could hide any number of dangers. She turns to him, her expression unwavering, and tells him not to worry. She is resolved to survive, no matter what happens. The dense canopy of Roche Island's forest stretched out before them, a sea of green under a partly cloudy sky. As they ventured into the woods, Patricia observed that they had yet to discover anything of note. Orin agreed, adding that, curiously, he couldn't sense the presence of any monsters either. She glanced at him, reminding him of his own advice not to let their guard down. He met her gaze with a smile, confirming her sentiment exactly. With renewed resolve, Orin suggested they press deeper into the forest, convinced they might find something further in. Patricia readily agreed. They continued their trek, the tall trees of the ancient forest closing in around them. Suddenly, Orin stopped, his head turning sharply as if he had sensed something. He quickly ushered her towards cover. "Is something wrong, Sensei?" she asked, her expression filled with concern as he directed them to hide. From behind the cover of a thick bush, he whispered that they had company. The revelation startled Patricia, her eyes widening in surprise as she let out a small gasp. Before them, a massive creature emerged. It was a beast with smooth, pale skin, a great shell upon its back, and dark, featureless eyes. A low, guttural sound rumbled from its throat. Peeking through the foliage, Patricia stared in a mixture of awe and terror. For someone who had spent her entire life within the safe confines of the academy, this was her very first encounter with a monster. She stammers out an affirmative response to Orin's question about her well-being. He stands protectively before her, observing the massive creature as it looms over them. He notes grimly that it seems to have decided to make them its breakfast. From the relative safety of the undergrowth, Orin confirms the creature's hostile intent, remarking that they should make it regret its decision. He then turns to Patricia with a surprising proposition. She should be the one to try and take it down. He explains that this will serve as excellent training, reassuring her that, with her skills, she will be fine. Patricia is visibly taken aback by the suggestion. Her mind reels at the thought of taking on the monster alone. Sensing her hesitation, Orin places a reassuring hand on her shoulder, telling her not to worry. He promises to stay nearby in case anything happens, framing this as a necessary part of the experience. His encouragement steels her resolve. With a determined look, Patricia accepts the challenge, declaring that she will prove she can protect herself. A complex, glowing magic circle materializes before her as she summons an ornate magical staff. She steps out into the open, staff in hand, facing the colossal creature alone. From the tree-line, Orin watches, reflecting on her unique power. While most people possess only a single magical attribute, Patricia is a rare exception, commanding 5: water, wind, fire, earth, and lightning. Furthermore, her mana capacity is far beyond that of an average mage. The creature lets out a deafening roar, its maw filled with sharp teeth. Unflinching, Patricia holds her ground, her expression one of intense concentration. Watching her, Orin notes with satisfaction that she has guts, just as he expected, and begins preparing his own magic as a precaution. In response to the threat, she raises her staff, conjuring a series of large, intricate magical shields that float and rotate around her, forming a powerful defensive barrier. Her defense established just in time. The monster lunges forward, its head crashing against one of the glowing shields with immense force. The creature lets out a furious, guttural roar as its attack is thwarted. Its initial assault is repelled, though cracks begin to spiderweb across the magical construct. Behind the barrier, Patricia stands her ground, poised and ready to unleash her own counteroffensive. Instead of defending, she met the new threat with a ferocious counterattack. A monstrous creature, combining the head of a shark with a powerful quadrupedal body, lunged at her, the force of their clash shattering the ground. From the cover of the dense forest, Orin watched the battle intently. His concentration was broken by a sudden noise from another direction. His eyes widened in alarm as he realized another monster was present. He knew that even Patricia would struggle in a 2-on-1 fight. Unaware of the second threat, Patricia focused on her current opponent, noting internally that this creature was significantly faster than the turtle had been. Just then, Orin spotted a new danger from an unexpected angle. "Patricia, above you," he shouted. Caught by surprise, she looked up, her expression turning to one of confusion. Her gaze met the sight of a figure plummeting from the sky, a dark-skinned woman with long, flowing white hair, clutching a staff as she descended rapidly toward the battlefield. As the unknown woman closed in, a desperate scream tore from Orin's throat. His horror shifted to stunned disbelief as he saw the attacker's determined gaze. He realized with a jolt that her target wasn't the monster, it was Patricia. A fierce cry echoes as a mysterious, dark-skinned woman with long, light hair brings her staff down, ending her battle with a massive monster. Below, Orin watches the sudden appearance with wide-eyed shock. She stands victorious atop the felled beast, having struck a vital point with a single, perfect blow. Orin can only stare, amazed by her power. He and Patricia approach the warrior. Patricia explains they came from the continent with their teacher, but the woman doesn't recognize their faces and seems puzzled by the mention of a continent and a teacher. Patricia is glad they've made contact, but then remembers Orin, exclaiming that there was one more person. Orin looks slightly embarrassed, having just been noticed. The woman's focus shifts entirely to them. She asks if they are from outside the island, and when Orin confirms, she breaks into a wide, friendly smile, introducing herself as Imu and expressing her pleasure in meeting them. Imu's excitement is palpable. She exclaims that it's her first time speaking to someone not from the island, and that she has so much to ask, though she tells them to wait just a moment. Her attention returns to the slain monster. Patricia, curious, asks what she intends to do with the creature's body. Imu cheerfully explains her plan to recover the neck meat for soup, boasting that it's super nutritious and can instantly cure any illness. Orin silently reflects on this, noting it as a very unique food culture. After her explanation, Orin inquires about her home. Imu points towards the trees, stating she lives in a nearby village. The confirmation of a village on the island solidifies Orin's assumption. He immediately asks if he and Patricia might come with her. He explained that they came to investigate the island, and, with many things still unclear, they wished to speak with the villagers. Imu, having finished dismantling the monster carcass, cheerfully welcomed them to do so. With her agreement secured, Orin readily accepted, telling her to lead the way. As they began their journey through the woods, he called out to Imu, remarking on how incredible her earlier fight was, and asking if someone had taught her to fight like that. Imu replied that she hadn't really been taught, which prompted a surprised Patricia to ask if all the villagers were as strong as her. Imu clarified that while not everyone was, there were a few others besides her capable of taking down monsters. As she walked ahead, Orin analyzed her movements, realizing her fighting style seemed entirely instinct-driven. He mused that despite this, her speed and power were anything but average. He concluded that with proper training, she could become an exceptionally strong warrior. His train of thought was broken when Imu suddenly announced their arrival. Before them stood a settlement of thatched-roof huts and tents, fortified by a wooden palisade and a tall watchtower. Imu proudly introduced it as Basil Village, her home. A glimpse inside revealed the routines of village life, with food laid out on woven trays to dry in the open air. After leading them into the village proper, Imu turned and asked them to wait right where they were. She then walked towards the largest tent in the compound and entered. As she disappeared inside, Patricia wondered who could live there, prompting Orin to speculate that, judging by its size, it must be someone of high status. He didn't have to wait long. Imu reappeared from the large tent, announcing with a bright expression that the village chief wished to meet them. This development was exactly what Orin had anticipated. She led them inside, where they came face to face with an elderly woman whose stern expression radiated authority. The chief confirmed what Imu had told her, acknowledging them as the people who came from outside the island. As the chief scrutinized them, Patricia affirmed she would remain by Orin's side. Orin then formally introduced himself as Orin Edwards, stating he was ordered by the king of Estrada to investigate Roche Island. The chief noted internally that they didn't look like soldiers from Estrada. Her skepticism was plain. She scoffed at the idea of an investigation, calling it a roundabout excuse and demanding to know their true purpose. He considered her demand, pondering what their real purpose could even be. It struck him as odd that these islanders knew about Estrada, when the kingdom itself had been completely unaware of their existence. His brief hesitation seemed to confirm her suspicions. Judging from his reaction, the chief concluded that he truly was ignorant. She then asked him directly if they were hiding from the kingdom. The chief's hand clenched as she declared that, regardless, her people had no intention of mingling with outsiders. Orin immediately countered, stating that their isolation was the very reason he had come to investigate. He pressed on, promising not to cause any trouble and pleading for permission to proceed. But the chief's mind was made up. She flatly refused, telling him that if he understood her position, he would leave the island at once. His persistence only fueled her anger. "You're persistent, aren't you?" She seethed, her voice rising as she began to make a declaration. "This island is..." Before she could finish, Imu cried out, "Chief!" Her sharp tone cut through the tension, her expression one of alarm at the chief's escalating fury. The tense confrontation is shattered when a young woman, Imu, bursts in, crying out that someone named Shiano's condition has worsened. The village chief glares at the interruption of her important conversation, while Orin reacts with wide-eyed alarm. He immediately decides to act, telling Patricia that they must go as well. She responds with a firm yes. Without another word, they dash out of the hut, following Imu into the village. As they hurry past, a shirtless islander watches them, thinking to himself that the locals seem to have a poor impression of people from the continent, just as he expected. In a friendlier encounter, the same man and a female companion had approached Orin and Patricia, warmly inviting the two of them to join a festival that evening as a show of gratitude. The sun begins to set over the island's palm trees. Inside another hut, Imu cries out in panic to her mother, the chief. She reports that Shirano has thrown up what little she ate and desperately asks what they should do as she kneels by the sick woman's side. Orin steps forward, stating that he might be able to figure out the cause. The chief whirls on him, enraged. She demands to know on what basis she should trust an outsider with her precious daughter, declaring that his status as an outsider is precisely the reason not to trust him. His expression is one of desperate urgency. He pleads with the chief to trust him just this once for Shiano's sake, warning that if they don't act quickly, it might be too late. As a conflicted Emu looks on, Patricia intervenes. She tells Emu that teacher Orin is so great, he's called a sage on the continent. With conviction, she insists that if it's him, she's sure he can save Shirano. Faced with Emu's desperate plea to save her sister, Orin examines the ailing Shirano. He states that he cannot be certain of the outcome, but offers a contingency. If his healing magic is not enough, he will travel to the continent to retrieve medicine. Hearing his resolve, Emu agrees to entrust her sister to him. Orin kneels beside Shirano, his hands glowing with a brilliant light as he begins to cast healing magic. As the light envelopes the girl, Orin internally admits that healing magic is not his specialty. He can only hope for mild, temporary effects. He worries that if the illness is serious, this will not be enough. Nearby, Emu watches in stunned silence as her sister's labored breathing seems to ease. The spell concludes, and a look of relief crosses Orin's face. He announces that the condition does not appear to be life-threatening. At his words, Emu is overcome with relief, stammering in disbelief. Patricia, smiling warmly, explains that the magic's effectiveness suggests the ailment is temporary. Orin confirms this, reassuring them that Shirano will get better soon, before asking Emu if anything in her sister's routine has changed recently. The village chief, having overheard, steps forward with a thoughtful expression. She suggests it might be simple overwork, recalling that Shirano had been working harder than usual to prepare for an upcoming festival. Orin listens and agrees, concluding that with proper rest, Shirano will be fine. She gazes down at her daughter, whose face is now serene in sleep. The chief remarks with wonder that the girl's pained expression from just moments before now seems like a distant memory. Turning away from her daughter's bedside, the chief faces Orin, her hardened demeanor softening. With genuine gratitude, she thanks him for saving her daughter's life. He responds humbly, dismissing it as not being a significant effort. He continues to downplay his role as they step outside the hut, explaining that he was only able to help because Shiano's symptoms were mild. The chief concedes his point, but admits that in their panic, they might have taken drastic and unnecessary actions without his intervention. His humble explanation hangs in the air as they look out towards the beach. In the distance, a small group of islanders has gathered, the tension from before having completely dissipated. A calm has settled over the village. A tense confrontation erupts as a muscular islander, brandishing a large staff, aggressively demands to know who the newcomers are and what they are doing in the village. In response to the hostility, the village chief steps between the man and Orin, calmly telling her kinsman to stand down. She acknowledges his concern, but reminds him that it was thanks to Orin that Shirano was saved. The man remains wary, pointing out that the visitors are clearly outsiders. Before he can continue, Emu rushes forward, loudly declaring to her father that it's true, Orin is the person who cured her mother's illness. The revelation strikes the man, and he immediately bows deeply before Orin, apologizing for not realizing he was his wife's savior. Orin simply tells him not to worry about it. With a misunderstanding resolved, the village celebrates. As night falls, a large bonfire is lit, its flames dancing under the stars, surrounded by the silhouettes of the gathered islanders. A feast is prepared for the festival, featuring platters of roasted meat, leaf-wrapped parcels of food, and large bowls filled with a celebratory drink. By the fire's warm glow, Orin sits and observes the festivities. Nearby, Patricia and Emu stand together, their previous animosity forgotten as they watch the flames peacefully. The village chief approaches him, asking if he is having fun. Orin turns to her with a smile, replying that he is, thanks to the kindness of everyone there. She once again apologizes for their initial treatment of him. He simply replies that he is glad to hear her say that, putting the matter to rest as they share a quiet moment by the fire. He sits with the village chief, who asks if he understands their initial hostility was a natural reaction. Orin offers a reassuring smile, telling her it's fine and that they understand completely. The chief then asks if all people on the continent heal others as he does. Orin clarifies that while many can perform simple healing magic, the art is not almighty. He gives an example, mentioning a student of his who is an expert in healing illnesses and injuries, whose power is so special that she has even been called a saint. As he speaks, the image of Emu comes to mind. The chief murmurs in understanding, realizing such powerful individuals must be rare. She then reveals the true reason for her people's wariness of outsiders. Her grandparents' generation had a major dispute with people from the continent. Orin is taken aback by this revelation, realizing something significant must have happened in the past. The chief confirms his suspicion but adds a troubling detail. The specifics of the event were never recorded. She reflects on her decision, wondering if it was truly acceptable to go against the one teaching she was always given, to never let outsiders into the village. With a small laugh, she looks at Orin and tells him that he and his companion seem trustworthy enough, giving off an aura of honesty that seems incapable of deceit. As they sit before the bonfire, the chief shares a crucial piece of history. The islanders began hiding from the Estlada kingdom since the reign of the former king's predecessor. What she finds most curious is that no records of this remain, leading her to believe that their history might have been deliberately erased. Elsewhere in the celebration, Patricia has a sudden, sharp realization. Her eyes widen as a thought connects in her mind, and she thinks of one word: teacher. Her reverie is broken as she, Imu, and another island girl cheerfully pull Orin to his feet, urging him to join them and dance. Orin internally concedes that while they must investigate the island's mysteries for tonight, they should simply cherish the moment and enjoy their time with the people around them. Within the Rain Knoll Grand Cathedral in the Kingdom of Giadis, the morning prayer commences. A priest leads the congregation, hoping for a blessed day for all. The focus of the prayer is a woman with long, light hair and pointed ears, her hands clasped in devotion. The onlookers are captivated by her presence, murmuring that she is as divine as an angel or even a goddess. After the service, in a quieter chamber, an acolyte approaches the woman, Lady Elise. The acolyte thanks her for her efforts and informs her that a letter has arrived, which she left on Elise's desk. Elise offers her thanks in return. She sits at her desk, noting with mild surprise that the letter is from Blitz. Her expression shifts to one of disbelief and shock as she reads its contents. Orin Sensei is retiring. The news sends Elise's mind reeling back to the past, to her days as a student at the academy where she first met Orin. The memory surfaces, beginning with the image of a handkerchief falling onto the stone courtyard. In the flashback, a younger Elise is confronted by another student, Patricia, who tells her not to act friendly, venomously calling her a half-breed. Stung by the words, Elise apologizes and turns away, dropping her handkerchief in her distress. It was then that Orin appeared. He told her it was a waste to let such prejudice affect her. He saw her true nature, explaining that her kindness was a power to save others and that her body was naturally attuned to healing magic. He encouraged her to use that gift, predicting she might even become a saintess one day. Pulled back to the present, Elise looks down at the letter. She understands now that the guidance he gave her is the very reason she can stand in the Grand Cathedral, having left not just the academy, but the entire kingdom to follow that path. The letter's author, Blitz, writes with urgency. He wants to inform all their fellow graduates about the professor's situation immediately and asks for help in doing so. He decides that while others spread the word, he will investigate the academy himself. As a final instruction, he adds a postscript. Forward the letter to Wendell and have him contact Jacqueline. Elsewhere, Patricia Grayson pins a letter, her thoughts drifting to her former teacher. She hopes Orin Sensei is doing well. With renewed determination, she resolves that she cannot simply sit around and do nothing. Meanwhile, Orin himself is grappling with the morning after a celebratory banquet. He clutches his head, lamenting that he drank too much. Still, he reminds himself that the village chief has finally granted him permission to survey the island, so he cannot afford to slack off. He knows he needs to get up right away, pushing himself to sit up despite the lingering effects of the previous night. As he moves, he feels a presence beside him in the bed. A jolt of confusion and alarm runs through him. He knows Patricia should be in the other room, so who could possibly be next to him? He cautiously lifts the blanket and is met with the sight of Imu, sleeping soundly beside him. In her sleep, she murmurs her own name with a sigh of relief, seemingly unaware of the awkwardness of the situation. Before he can react, the bedroom door slides open, revealing Patricia. Her eyes widen in surprise as she sees him awake, but her gaze quickly falls upon Imu in his bed, and she lets out a startled cry. Patricia lunges forward in a flurry of motion, shouting incoherently. Orin, still holding the half-asleep Imu, tries to de-escalate the situation, urging Patricia to calm down. A moment later, her initial outburst subsides. With a deep blush coloring her cheeks, Patricia closes her eyes and apologizes, admitting that she lost her composure. The commotion has drawn another visitor. A young islander woman with dark skin and light hair peeks into the room alongside Patricia, cheerfully calling out to Sensei. Patricia explains to her that what she just did is not common courtesy, and that one should use the front door. The girl brightly responds that she understands. Her curiosity piqued, the young woman turns to Orin with sparkling eyes, begging him to teach her and tell her all about the world outside the island. She explains that Patricia had told her he knows all sorts of things and is a great teacher, leaving Orin looking slightly overwhelmed by the sudden request. He clarifies that he is no longer a teacher, but relents with a condition. If he is going to teach, he would not go easy on her. The young islander girl, Im, throws her arms up and cheers with delight. Having settled the matter, he declares their new objective, to begin a full-scale survey of the island, starting immediately. As they venture into the dense forest, Orin is struck by the sheer size of the island. He turns to his new student and guide, Im, and asks if her people ever relocate their village. She readily confirms that they do, explaining that their movements are dictated by the seasons. When the weather turns hot and the storms from the ocean intensify, her people move their settlement farther away from the coast. He processes this information, then logically asks if their migratory lifestyle means they have explored the whole island. Im cheerfully replies that they have not explored everything. She elaborates, stating that her people stick to the familiar territories they have always used. They are uncertain if any new areas are safe enough to live in. The realization dawns on him. Their migration is confined to a known circuit of locations. This means a vast portion of the island remains completely unexplored territory. As they continue their trek, he senses a change just ahead. He comments on the long walk they've had, but Im assures him she is perfectly fine. They emerge from the dense foliage to the breathtaking sight of a sunlit coastline, the water glittering as it washes over the sand. Patricia is left momentarily speechless, simply uttering a wow. Im is equally captivated, expressing her astonishment that such a beautiful place even existed on her own island. She excitedly points towards the water, shouting that she has spotted a fish. Patricia eagerly asks where, while Oren watches them with a gentle smile. Thinking to himself it is good to see them having fun. With his companions occupied, he decides to continue scouting the area on his own. His solo exploration leads him up a rocky outcrop. As he peers over the edge, his expression shifts to one of surprise, and he murmurs that this is quite a discovery. Before him, wedged impossibly among the coastal cliffs, lies the enormous, decaying hulk of a multi-masted ship. He identifies the colossal structure plainly, a shipwreck. His prolonged silence draws the attention of his companions, who have now caught up to him. Patricia asks if he found something, while Im, sensing his change in demeanor, asks if something is wrong. They all turn their gaze to the incredible sight. Patricia exclaims in awe at the huge shipwreck, calling it incredible. Oren adds that a wreck of this size is quite rare. His assessment leads him to a critical question, and he turns directly to his new student, asking him if she knew about this ship. She is visibly startled by the question, her eyes widening in surprise. After a moment of hesitation, she stammers a denial, insisting that this is the first time she has ever seen it. He seems to consider her response for a moment, a thoughtful escaping him. Deciding on a course of action, he declares that they should investigate the ship closely, as they might uncover some clues. He steps aboard the derelict vessel, his analytical gaze sweeping across the interior. He remarks that the ship is huge compared to typical merchant vessels, deducing that someone of very high rank must have been aboard. Patricia, standing beside him, looks surprised and asks how he can possibly tell. He gestures towards the ship's cabin, explaining that even after prolonged exposure to the elements, the high-quality furniture and carpets remain in remarkably good condition. Patricia gasps at the implication, exclaiming in disbelief, "Royalty?" He tempers her shock, clarifying that while it is only a theory, it is possible someone of royal status was on the ship. He continues his line of reasoning, stating that if a person of such status went missing, it must have caused a major stir. He concludes that investigating the ship further might reveal its country of origin. Patricia then connects this to a previous discovery, asking her sensei if he thinks some of the items that washed up on the mainland came from this ship. He confirms that it is very likely. Nearby, Im stands silently, barefoot on the wooden deck. Noticing her quiet and withdrawn demeanor, Oren turns his attention fully to the islander, asking gently, "What's wrong, Im?" He presses further, observing that she's been acting strange since they found the wreck, and asking if it means something to her. With her face obscured by her hair, Im clutches her hands and murmurs that she doesn't really know either, a flicker of pain crossing her face. Patricia approaches, asking him if she is all right, to which Im offers a quiet word of thanks. Oren watches them, internally pondering if there is some connection between Im and the ship, even if she herself is unaware of what is bothering her. She looks at him with deep concern, her eyes wide as she points out, "You look pale." Im looks up, a strained expression on her face. She attempts a reassurance, saying she's okay, and asks to be left alone for now. Seeing Im's distress, Oren decides to halt their investigation for the day. He tells Patricia to take him outside the ship and let her rest. Patricia acknowledges the instruction, understanding the need to prioritize Im's well-being. Outside, perched on the rocky shore, he watches as Patricia embraces the distraught Im. He laments his lack of progress. A captain's log could have explained both the ship's origin and the reason for Im's powerful, unsettling reaction, but he has found nothing so far. His thoughts are interrupted as a glint on the dark, cracked ground catches his attention. He kneels and picks up a round metallic object, turning it over in his hand. He immediately recognizes the intricate design, questioning if it is some kind of crest. Holding the crest, a look of focused resolve settles on his face. He understands the potential significance of his discovery. If he can decode this symbol, he might be one step closer to unraveling the deep secrets of Roche Island. Standing in a field near the estate with a hoe in hand, Oren addresses Patricia and Im. He announces his plan to begin cultivating the surrounding land that afternoon, explaining that while they have supplies from the kingdom, securing a local food source is a wise precaution. In response to his plan, Im enthusiastically declares that she is fine and wants to help. Patricia expresses her concern, asking if Im is truly well enough, and reminding her that she can rest. She mentions that Oren had used healing magic on her, which should have helped. Im beams, thanking her teacher and confirming she feels much better now. With the decision made, the three of them begin working the land, their host striking the dark soil. As he works, Oren considers their options. He notes the weather is getting hotter, making tomatoes or eggplants good choices, and realizes they must first prepare the soil and plant the seeds. All three work together, finding enjoyment in the labor. Patricia observes Im's boundless energy, and Oren smiles, agreeing that it is a good thing to see. The young islander continues to work with a cheerful expression. He pauses for a moment, his thoughts drifting to the shocking shipwreck that brought him to them. He resolves to ask the king for more information about the incident on his next trip back to the capital. Deciding to take a break from tilling, he tells the others he is going to gather firewood and materials for fertilizer, assuring them he will be right back. He then turns and walks away from the field, heading into the dense forest that borders the estate. While making his way through the thick undergrowth, a sudden sight brings him to an abrupt halt. His eyes widen in disbelief as he questions what lies before him. He finds himself standing at the edge of a sheer drop-off, the ground cut away to form a stone-faced cliff. He peers down from the precipice at the unexpected construction below. Spread out before him is a vast derelict port. Weathered wooden piers and stone foundations jut out into the sea, a silent testament to a forgotten past on this supposedly undeveloped island. He stood amidst the ruins, contemplating the discovery. He had no idea a place like this existed on the opposite shore from shipwreck, and there was no sign of any people. He found it strange that King Estrada had never mentioned anything like it. Though not particularly large, the area had clearly once functioned as a port town. His analysis continued as he surveyed the crumbling stonework. Judging by the ruined state of the town, it had likely been there for decades, meaning its construction might have started under the previous king. He found it hard to believe the port wasn't connected to the shipwreck, and even harder to imagine the current king being unaware of its existence. The implications gave rise to one more pressing question in his mind. As he made his way back through the woods, he realized he had become so focused on reaching the port that he'd lost his way. Emerging from the trees, he spotted familiar figures and called out. His call was met with concern. Patricia and Im, both covered in dirt from working the soil, looked up at him. They demanded to know where he had been, exclaiming that he was late. He approached them as Patricia explained that she had figured something must have happened, which was why he was taking so long. Oren, looking at the tilled earth, asked if they had been tending the field for him. He smiled warmly, his previous concerns momentarily forgotten. He offered his sincere thanks to both of them for their hard work. As dusk settled over the island, Oren noted that they were both covered in mud. He told them to go take a bath right away, and they both cheerfully agreed. The day's work done, the three returned to the quiet cottage nestled amongst the trees, its windows dark against the fading light. In a warm, steaming bath, Patricia and Im relax after a long day. Im, with a look of gentle concern, reaches out towards a blushing Patricia, who seems to be enjoying the tranquil moment. The peaceful atmosphere is broken by Oren's voice from outside, cheerfully offering to wash Patricia's back. Startled, she stammers that she is fine, her face flushing. He turns away from the bathhouse, his thoughts shifting to his immediate duties. First, he resolves to make a delicious dinner for the two who worked so hard. After that, his focus is on the journey ahead. Tomorrow, they head for the Estrada Kingdom. Inside a workshop filled with various tools and alchemical equipment, Oren stands before a large, bubbling cauldron, beginning his preparations. Elsewhere, in a different workshop, a young woman is hard at work, her focus entirely on the intricate device before her. She is Wendell, a magical tool engineer. Her concentration is broken by a familiar voice. A young man with light, spiky hair, whom she calls Travis Senpai, greets her and asks about the progress on his commission. Wendell looks up, a slight smile on her face, and confirms that it is already finished. She then presents him with the fruit of her labor, a finely crafted sword with an ornate hilt. He takes the weapon, his expression one of admiration. He compliments her, remarking that her skill is as sharp as ever, which is no surprise considering she trained under Master Oren. He continues his praise, reminding her that she is the youngest in history to clear the third layer of a labyrinth. Wendell dismisses the compliment with a laugh, but Travis's attention has already shifted. He points out a small, sealed letter on her desk, noting that she's received a cute little letter. He leans in closer, teasingly asking if the letter is from Elise of her same golden generation. Flustered, Wendell snatches the letter, insisting it's not what he thinks and calling him a sly dog for hiding things himself. He remained focused on the letter, a faint blush on his cheeks as Travis leaned in, asking what it said. His assistant, flustered by the intrusion, could only stammer in protest. Wendell hesitated, confirming he had read it, but deflecting the question about its contents. Elsewhere, the news of Oren's retirement was met with disbelief. An official slammed his hand on a desk, shouting that it was an immeasurable loss for the country and that someone like Oren wouldn't just retire. His shock was shared by Wendell's assistant, who agreed that it couldn't have happened without a reason. Her thoughts drifted to Wendell's past. Another official recalled him as a reclusive kid, obsessed with making things, and mentioned that they had even asked Oren to give the boy a firm talking to. The memory became vivid, Oren arriving at a younger Wendell's cluttered workshop. As Oren announced his presence, the boy, not even turning from his desk, curtly told him to leave. Ignoring the dismissal, Oren asked if he liked making magical tools. Wendell admitted that he had no talent for magic or swordsmanship, and therefore didn't want to go to school. Oren offered a different perspective. He explained that when you work hard at something you love and become better than anyone else, that itself is a form of talent. With a gentle smile, he affirmed that Wendell possessed that very talent and offered him a place to hone it under his guidance. That invitation marked a turning point. From that day forward, Wendell dedicated himself to his craft, studying and working tirelessly, eventually leaving his old life behind to pursue his true calling. He reflected on his current situation, now the owner of a workshop dedicated to magical tools, a status he owed entirely to his mentor, Oren. His thoughts were interrupted by his companion, Travis, who brought up a troubling development. He noted that many adventurers were leaving the country due to recent policy changes and asked for Wendell's opinion. Wendell confirmed that Travis was referring to the legal revisions issued by the king. As a result of these new decrees, a growing trend of devaluing adventurers was spreading across the nation. Travis grimaced, stating that this was exactly the problem, as most of his own clients were adventurers. Wendell's expression hardened. He declared that this meant it was his problem as well, not just an issue for others. The consequences of this exodus were plain to see. The once bustling adventurer town of Gardan, a former hub of life and commerce, had become desolate and completely lost its vitality. Travis ran a hand through his hair in frustration, questioning the country's actions, especially after what had happened to their teacher. Wendell then asked if Travis had considered moving to another country. With a heavy look, Travis admitted that he had, in fact, started thinking about it. With the country in turmoil, the memory of Master Oren's departure cast a long shadow. A lone, cloaked figure walking away from the now empty streets. This realization solidified his resolve. Seated at his desk, Wendell pushed his work goggles up onto his forehead, his expression determined. For Master Oren, and for the country itself, he concluded that he, too, had to take action. As a new day begins, Oren and Patricia finalize their plans. With everything set, Oren declares their intention to head to the Estrada royal capital. Patricia agrees, noting it has been a while since they were on the mainland. Their conversation is suddenly interrupted by Im, who bursts in with an energetic good morning. She immediately announces her desire to join them, asking to be taken along. Patricia expresses her worry, questioning Oren if it's truly all right to take him away from the island so suddenly. Im looks at Oren with wide, determined eyes, explaining that she wants to see for herself the world that he and Patricia came from. He agrees, but on the condition that she follows his rules. She must not wander away from him or go off with strangers. Im cheerfully accepts, though she playfully notes that he is treating her like a little kid. Patricia, overhearing the exchange, smiles warmly at him. She concedes that it is better to be safe than sorry. Oren then raises a practical concern about Im's clothing, noting that her island attire would stand out too much in the capital. He suggests she borrow something from Patricia, an idea Im enthusiastically agrees to. A short time later, the girls reappear. Patricia has changed into casual clothes, and Im now wears a simple dress, exclaiming how happy she is to wear Patricia's clothes. Oren compliments them both. With everyone ready, he announces they will take a special route, the Path of the Tides, since the tide is low. With their course set, the group heads out, their boots pressing into the wet sand of the tidal flats. They arrive on a deserted beach. Patricia looks around and observes that they have reached the mainland, at the outskirts of the royal capital. Oren turns to Im, warning her that the city is on a completely different scale than her village, and that she must be careful not to get separated. Im quietly processes his words, pondering the concept of being separated. He is startled as Im suddenly grabs his arm, cheerfully declaring that holding on like this will prevent her from getting lost. While he concedes her point, Patricia interjects with a sharp "Hey now." Im, however, simply reaffirms that if she holds on tight, she will be safe. Patricia then addresses Oren directly, asking what the problem is. She admits that while she's not as unfamiliar with cities as Im, it is only her second time in the capital, and she could also get lost. She reminds him of his own teaching. Preventable risks should be prevented before they happen. With that, she declares her decision is purely rational and without ulterior motive. Before Oren can fully process it, she firmly takes hold of his other arm. He now stands awkwardly trapped between the two women, each holding one of his arms. Im seems to be enjoying the situation, finding it quite amusing. After a moment of silence, the three come to a mutual, unspoken agreement to proceed into the city just as they are. As they walk through the bustling streets, Im is captivated by the sights. Having never seen anything like it, she exclaims in wonder that it's a real town and that it's amazing. Their unusual formation draws the attention of onlookers. People in the street murmur about how close the trio seems, with one person even asking if they are family. Im overhears the comment and giggles, happily telling Patricia that people think they look like a family. The thought, however, seems to bother Patricia, who silently wonders why she is so irritated by it. Their journey through the city concludes as they arrive before the magnificent royal castle. As Oren announces their arrival, Im stares up the massive structure in awe. She innocently asks if its size means the king is also huge, prompting a light-hearted chuckle and a denial from Oren. He and his companions are led through a lavishly decorated hallway within the royal castle. Im, overwhelmed by the opulence, exclaims how sparkly and beautiful everything is, calling out to Oren in wonder. A royal knight gestures them forward, welcoming them and confirming that the arrangements for their audience with the king are complete. Oren offers a simple word of thanks. As they approach the throne room doors, he reflects internally. This second audience with the king might finally bring them one step closer to uncovering the truth of Roche Island. Meanwhile, in a valley region of the southern Jihadist kingdom, a different kind of event has unfolded. A colossal wyvern lies dead on the ground, its massive form dwarfing a lone, small figure standing nearby. An unseen observer expresses shock, wondering what could have possibly taken down such a beast. A troop of royal knights in full armor finally arrives at the scene. One of them, seeing the situation is already resolved, calls out with surprise, asking if the person responsible has only just arrived. The person they address is a woman in a large witch's hat, who introduces herself as Jacqueline, the Witch of 1,000 Faces. She chides the knights for their tardiness, explaining that she defeated the beast herself, because if the route had been blocked, she wouldn't have been able to get her favorite tea leaves. A glimpse of her power shows the wyvern caught in a vortex of immense force, its body twisted violently. Standing nearby is Jacqueline, in a different, more ethereal form with an elaborate headpiece, calmly observing the creature's demise. The knights look on in awe. One of them identifies her by her full title, acknowledging that such power is to be expected from the Witch of 1,000 Faces, Jacqueline. Another knight agrees, recounting the legends about her. They say she can freely use all types of magic, possesses an extraordinary natural mana pool, and that no one can match her. He admits it's his first time meeting her, but she undeniably has the aura of one of the legendary Golden Generation. Soaring through the sky on her staff, Jacqueline embodies the very essence of her reputation. She was, by all accounts, born to be a witch. Far away, under a cloudy night sky, stands a grand, multi-spired manor. Inside, the witch Jacqueline receives a message. A small, mechanical bird delivers a letter, and she notes with surprise that it's from Wendell, remarking on how unusual it is since he rarely sends letters. As she reads its contents, her expression shifts to one of utter disbelief. The letter informs her that Orin-sensei is retiring. The name strikes a deep chord. He is the only person who has ever made her kneel. The news triggers a violent reaction. A furious no erupts from her as a blast of raw magical energy explodes from her body, shattering the air around the academy building. The mention of being brought to her knees triggers a vivid memory of her own power. She recalls a past spectacle at the academy's training grounds, where she, as a new student, had effortlessly defeated a magic studies teacher, leaving onlookers stunned at her overwhelming strength. In those days, she was a student with long, light blonde hair and an air of supreme confidence. She walked the academy halls, declaring she had nothing to learn from anyone weaker than herself, even as another student called out to her for skipping class yet again. The student, a confident young man with spiky, light-colored hair named Travis, caught up to her. He challenged her directly to a match. He laid out his terms with a disarming smile. If he were to win, she would have to join his class. The challenge was set, leading to a spectacular duel that rocked the arena. The result, however, was a complete reversal. The duel ended with Jacqueline sprawled on the cracked stone floor, her weapon just out of reach. She could only stare up in shock, the thought echoing in her mind. Impossible. I couldn't even touch him. He stood over her, not with scorn, but with gentle encouragement. Travis told her that defeat is nothing to be ashamed of, but rather a prelude to her next evolution. His words seemed to pierce through her shock as her wide eyes looked up at him. As her mind reels from the news of Orin's retirement, the image of their legendary group, the Golden Generation, forms in her thoughts. There they were in their prime. Orin, Travis, Wendell, Elise, and herself, an assembly of unparalleled talent. The memory is broken by a voice from behind. As she stands on a balcony, a man in armor approaches, observing that she must have received the letter. He reveals himself as the Holy Knight, Blitz. He greets her, noting it has been a while, and remarks on how shaken she is, so much so that she didn't even notice him. Blitz continues, deducing from her reaction that she has already learned the news. Startled, Jacqueline finally registers his presence, exclaiming his name. Before she can say more, another voice cuts in. Wendell states that details about their former teacher will have to wait, adding that the very presence of a holy knight is enough for him to guess the reason for this gathering. Blitz confirms Wendell's suspicion, explaining that not only Jacqueline, but also Elise, Wendell, and he himself have all been summoned. He wonders aloud what matter could possibly require the entire Golden Generation to assemble. Jacqueline, her expression hidden by the brim of her hat, asks if His Majesty, the King of Jihadis, is the one who has summoned them. Blitz confirms this, and, seeing no other business there, urges them to go. He adds a pointed remark, noting that Jacqueline is famous for ignoring summons, unless they are related to Orin-sensei. With a sharp humph, Jacqueline crosses her arms, her resolve hardening. She declares that she intends to question the king himself about their former teacher. From his side, Wendell voices his agreement. Yeah, he says simply, let's go. The four members of the Golden Generation present, Wendell, Jacqueline, Elise, and Blitz, are united in their purpose. Their shared thought is clear. They're going to the king. At the royal castle in the Jihadist kingdom, a significant event is underway, summoned by the king himself. Inside, an audience is being prepared. It is noted that the former students of Sage Orin, despite their youth, now support the nation with their exceptional talents. The group, known as the Golden Generation, has finally assembled. Among them are Elise, the Saintess, and Wendell, the magical tool engineer. They are joined by Jacqueline, the Witch of 1,000 Faces, and Blitz, a holy knight of the Geodis Kingdom. As the four of them walk through the castle halls, they naturally become the center of attention. It is a rare sight for all four to be gathered together like this. Elise remarks that they owe everything to their teacher for guiding them to their current positions. Blitz soberly adds a crucial detail. Their teacher, Orin Sensei, clashed with the headmistress and subsequently left the country. Jacqueline declares that if their teacher's retirement is anything but what it seems, not even the king will be spared her judgment. Wendell agrees, noting a feeling that the entire kingdom of Geodis has been moving in a strange direction lately. Blitz continues walking forward with purpose, stating that it is precisely for this reason that they must act for the sake of their teacher and for the future of the country. As he finishes his thought, the grand doors before them swing open. On the throne before them sits the king of Estrada. He looks upon the assembled group and welcomes them, expressing his gladness at their arrival. He begins by stating his intention to entrust them with a matter of great importance to the nation's future. Blitz, representing the group, asks him to elaborate. The king explains that this year at the Royal Magic Sword Academy, there's a group of students so talented that they are said to rival even the Golden Generation themselves. He continues, singling out the most exceptional among them, Kyle Arnalord, the son of Headmistress Rose Arnalord. The king declares him a true once-in-decades prodigy. Hearing this name, Jacqueline turns to her companions, asking if they have heard of him. Wendell admits he has not, and Elise confirms she is also unfamiliar with the name. Blitz, however, remains silent, recalling a letter from Grover. The letter alleged that not only Kyle Arnalord, but also several teachers under the headmistress's influence were inflating the grades of certain noble sons and daughters. Unaware of this internal conflict, the king formally makes his request. He wishes to appoint the Golden Generation as special instructors to guide these talented students, especially Kyle, onto the correct path. Jacqueline reacts with visible shock, realizing the king has made this decision without any prior consultation. In response to the royal command, Blitz steps forward and, with a firm voice, respectfully declines. The king's face contorts in fury. He roars in disbelief, questioning how they would dare defy a royal order, and commands his guards to seize the departing knight. As he turns to leave, Blitz calmly asks for the precise reason behind the request, leaving the king momentarily speechless. In a flash, Jacqueline appears before the throne. She declares that, as Blitz has refused His Majesty's request, the rest of them naturally refuse as well. Announcing their departure, she challenges the stunned king to try and stop them. Having departed the throne room, the night Blitz walks through a grand palace corridor, his mind racing. He recalls a letter from his senior, Grover, which warned that power within the kingdom was being centralized into the hands of the headmistress. He processes this, wondering what is truly going on. At first, he had dismissed the warning as unbelievable, but judging from the king's strange proposal, he now realizes it must be true. His realization hardens into resolve. He concludes that they will need to start investigating, reflecting that the kingdom's recent movements have felt ominous, even dangerous. He suspects that his sensei's exile may be connected to it all. As he stands alone with his thoughts, a voice remarks that such a direct, justice-driven response is exactly what one would expect from the ultra-straight-laced Blitz. The comment comes from one of his companions, a woman with short hair and goggles, who praises his boldness in defying the king. Beside her, the Saintess Elise smiles, adding that he truly hates injustice. Jacqueline then turns her attention to Blitz. She concedes that his integrity is an admirable trait, but his defiant attitude before the king was concerning. She presses him, suggesting that as a knight serving the kingdom, he must know something the rest of them do not. The goggle-wearing woman agrees, noting that his predictable nature is exactly why she is worried he might do something reckless again. Elise lets out a small laugh, remarking that he has always been this way, even when they were students. Facing their collective concern, Blitz turns and confronts them with a simple question. Are you going to stop me? With a click of her tongue, Jacqueline clarifies their stance. It is quite the opposite, she declares. They are all saying they will go along with his recklessness. Behind her, Elise and their other companion nod in firm agreement. Alongside her companions, the witch stood with the rest of the Golden Generation before a set of large double doors. With their course of action decided, Orin turned slightly to the group and offered a simple word of gratitude. Thanks. Thus, their investigation into the kingdom of Estrada officially began. Their footsteps echoed in unison as they proceeded forward. Their path led them to the royal castle of the kingdom of Estrada. Inside the grand throne room, Orin, Jacqueline, and Elise knelt before the monarch. This was their first audience with the king, an encounter that could bring them closer to uncovering the mystery of Roche Island. Looking up at the seated figure, Orin broke the formal silence. It's been a while, he stated respectfully, Your Majesty. Within the grand throne room, King Estrada looks down from his seat of power towards the figures standing on the palace steps below. He directs a question to Orin, asking about the identity of a young woman accompanying him. Orin formally introduces her as Emu, explaining that she resides in Padgel Village on Roche Island. The The revelation stuns a nearby court official, who expresses his shock and disbelief, questioning how there could be inhabitants on an island thought to be deserted. The king then turns his attention to the nervous Imu. He presses her for an answer. If there were islanders, why did they never attempt to make contact with the mainland? Imu, overwhelmed, can only stammer hesitantly. However, before the king's questioning can continue, Patricia steps forward slightly to comfort Imu, reassuring her that the people in the court are not her enemies. Beside her, Elise offers a gentle, supportive smile. Orin acknowledges Patricia's kindness with thanks. He then clarifies to the court that it seems the islanders have, in fact, made contact with people from the mainland before. At this, a grateful smile appears on Imu's face. The king finds this difficult to believe, stroking his chin in thought. He states plainly that there are no official records of any such contact. Orin counters that the contact was likely unofficial. He then informs the king that he has 2 additional matters to report regarding the situation. His interest piqued, the king leans forward slightly, granting his permission for the report to continue. Let's hear it, he commands. As Orin prepares to elaborate, the king silently mulls over the key concepts, a shipwreck and a port town. He begins his explanation, illustrating that the shipwreck's location is in a blind spot from the mainland. His diagram points to the cabin, a port town, and a specific channel named Minoishi Tobiguchi, laying out the geographical context of the incident. He continues his report, pointing out that if the shipwrecked vessel was a legitimate merchant ship, the kingdom should have noticed its failure to arrive. King Estrada considers this, positing that due to the frequent storms around Roche Island, the ship might have simply run aground during one. To support his findings, he presents an item he discovered in a rocky area near the shipwreck. The king takes the object, a metallic emblem, and examines it closely, pondering its design. Orin then asks if His Majesty knows anything about the crest. After a moment of consideration, the king admits that he does not recognize the insignia. Orin quietly acknowledges this information. Turning his attention to his knight, Glover, the king issues 2 commands. He orders an immediate investigation to determine which country the badge belongs to and a review of all merchant ships that followed proper procedures but never reached Estrada. Glover confirms the orders. His orders given, the king shifts his focus back to Orin, ready to discuss the matter of the port town. Seeing Orin's alert expression, the king asks if he has an idea about it. He confirms that he does, revealing a startling fact. During the previous king's reign, there was a plan to build a port on that very island. The king finds this information strange, stating that he had heard the plan was abandoned. Orin confirms that this is indeed the case. He reasons that if a port was actually built, there must be documents from the planning phase. He declares that his side will investigate the matter, including the shipwreck. Later, back with Patricia and Imu, Orin expresses his gratitude for the king's cooperation. The 3 of them sit together, awaiting the results of the investigation. He decides to conclude their business with the king for the day, his mind still puzzling over the discrepancy. The previous king had built the port town, yet the current king was never properly informed. He turns to Imu, who readily agrees to depart. As they leave the royal presence, King Estrada offers a final, formal farewell, wishing Imu an enjoyable time in his country. Her face flushes with a shy smile as she gives an enthusiastic yes in response. Now outside, Orin turns to his companions. He declares that from this point forward, the 3 of them, himself, Patricia, and Imu, will investigate the matter further together. He notes that they still have time before the tidal path back to the island reappears and suggests they look around the marketplace until then. The idea brings a bright spark to both Patricia's and Imu's faces. Imu's excitement gets the better of her as she spots an interesting shop and declares her intention to go. Patricia gently chides her, warning that it's dangerous to run off so suddenly, a sentiment with which Orin quietly agrees. The group proceeds through the lively marketplace, a cobblestone street filled with vendors and shoppers. As they walk, Orin's gaze is drawn to a display of jewelry in one of the stalls. He pauses, his curiosity piqued. His eyes widen in disbelief. Among the trinkets is a pendant bearing a familiar crest, the very same emblem from the badge he recovered. Without hesitation, he purchases the item. The shopkeeper seems slightly surprised by the quick sale, confirming the transaction as Orin affirms his decision. Holding the pendant, Orin asks the shopkeeper if he made it himself. The man explains that he didn't. It was something he found many years ago on a nearby beach where a ship had run aground and all sorts of cargo had washed ashore. He leaned forward, his interest captured. Shopkeeper, he began, that beach. Could you tell me where it is? Beside him, Patricia noted his intensity, remarking that he had found a real lead. Following the shopkeeper's directions, they arrived at a desolate coastline. The shore was a graveyard of splintered wood and broken cargo, the remnants of a great vessel smashed against the rocks and scattered by the relentless tide. As they walked among the debris, Imu looked around with a questioning gaze. Orin scanned the wreckage, observing aloud that he couldn't see any items that might serve as clues. Patricia voiced her thoughts, suggesting that if they could solve the mystery of the emblem they purchased, they might also discover the shipwreck's country of origin. She added that this could also unravel the mystery of the port town the previous king was planning. Orin nodded in agreement, confirming she was right. Despite their hopes, the sheer volume of debris was overwhelming. Orin looked over the scattered planks and crates, wishing internally for some kind of hint to emerge from the chaos. His searching eyes then locked onto a particular piece of wood, a flat plank half buried in the sand, bearing dark markings. He knelt for a closer look. Upon the weathered surface was a string of unfamiliar characters, written in a stark, angular script. This is, he murmured to himself. He analyzed the inscription. Given the small number of characters, he quickly deduced it wasn't a sentence, but more likely some kind of name. Holding the plank, he turned to his companions. As Patricia pointed toward the piece of wood, Orin declared, "This might be a hit." Patricia's head snapped up, her eyes wide with anticipation. "So," she asked, leaning forward slightly, "can you figure something out?" She listened intently, murmuring her understanding as Orin, holding the inscribed plank, declared with confidence that he would use these strange characters to trace the ship's origin. He then suggested they discuss the matter further once they returned home, but his practical suggestion was cut short by Emu's sudden cry of alarm. She pointed out that if they didn't hurry, the tidal path would disappear. They had obtained an unexpected clue, but now faced a race against the receding tide. Upon returning, Orin quietly observes the room where Patricia and Emu are sleeping peacefully together under a single blanket. Later, he sits at a desk, the piece of wood from the shipwreck placed before him. With a crack of his knuckles, he resolves to begin deciphering the strange text. He examines the inscription, noting the unfamiliar characters. His initial thought is that the script looks like it originates from a southern country. This line of thinking prompts him to consult a book. A realization dawns on him as he identifies the writing as the official language of the Reason Kingdom. He recalls that this same country made headlines when their princess went missing. His eyes widen as he considers the implications, the image of the shipwreck vivid in his mind. He questions if there could be a connection between the wreck and the missing princess of Reason. However, he quickly finds a flaw in his own theory. He reasons that if a ship carrying royalty had truly disappeared, a massive search would have been launched by the kingdom. He concludes that the broader political situation might be a distraction. The real clue to solving the mystery, he believes, must be on the piece of wood itself. With renewed determination, he returns his focus to the book and the script, poring over the details in the light of a glowing crystal. His focused effort pays off. He successfully deciphers a single word from the inscription, Osborne. He leans back, pondering the discovery. He assumes it must be a person's name, but the identity of this individual remains a complete mystery. He decides that further speculation is pointless for now, closing the book on the matter. The investigation into the kingdom's affairs will have to be put on hold. Shifting his focus, he gathers Patricia and Emu on the beach. He announces that before they investigate the island further, he wants to check everyone's skills by conducting some training. Both girls agree with enthusiasm. As they prepare, Emu explains to Patricia that this training is not just for play. She believes that by deepening their relationship, they will become indispensable allies to both the mainland and the island, a point which Patricia seems to take to heart. Orin, now shirtless and ready for combat, declares that he will start with Patricia. She nervously asks him to go easy on her. With a sharp cry, she lunges, throwing a quick punch. Orin easily dodges, noting internally that her speed-focused attack shows the results of her academy lessons. The initial burst of energy is short-lived, however, and she is soon left panting heavily from the effort. After only 15 minutes, the spar concludes. As Patricia sits on the ground, trying to recover, Orin points out that her main issue is a clear lack of stamina, to which she can only weakly agree. He presses on, asking if she can still move. Patricia insists she is fine, but Orin continues his assessment, questioning what happens to her magical output now that her physical energy is depleted. Her eyes widen at the implication. Seeing her surprise, Orin smiles and challenges her directly. Try firing her magic at him with full power. Stealing her resolve, Patricia agrees to unleash a single shot. She begins to gather her energy, preparing to cast lightning magic as Orin watches, satisfied with the response. She closes her eyes, gathering the last of her magical energy. A sudden surge of power, far greater than expected, crackles around her, causing her to flinch in surprise. With a determined shout, she unleashes the spell. A massive sphere of lightning erupts from her outstretched hand. Watching from a distance, Emu is stunned, realizing this display is on a completely different level from the magic Patricia used against her mother. In response to the massive discharge of energy, Orin calmly raises his own hand. Arcs of lightning, mirroring Patricia's, coalesce before him and surge forward to intercept the attack. The two spells collide, canceling each other out in a blinding flash of neutralized power. Patricia grunts with the strain, her eyes wide with disbelief. Orin smiles, his hands still sparking with residual energy, and compliments her on her improvement. She can only stare, shocked that he countered her full power attack with a lightning spell of precisely equal output. She thanks him meekly, but admits with a downcast expression that she feels she is still nowhere near his level of skill. He places a reassuring hand on her head, telling her with a gentle smile not to think she can surpass him so easily. With Patricia's test concluded, Orin turns his attention to Emu, who stands ready. He announces that it is now her turn and asks if she is prepared. She responds with a confident, "Of course." He instructs her to come at him seriously. Imu agrees, and without hesitation, she launches herself forward, sprinting from the open ground into the nearby forest. She moves with startling speed, weaving through the trees. Orin is impressed, recalling her battle with the turtle monster and noting her innate quickness. In an instant, she closes the distance and unleashes a powerful kick. He blocks the blow with his forearm, the impact feeling surprisingly heavy. He internally praises her as a natural talent for her ability to read his movements and respond instantly. Undeterred, Imu pushes off his arm, a determined look on her face as she declares she isn't finished yet. Having parried the final attack, Orin smiles warmly, bringing the training session to a close. He announces, "All right, let's call it day." He looks over at Imu, who sits on the sandy ground, and assesses her performance. He notes that while her overall movements are still rough, she possesses the potential to become something extraordinary with future training. Patricia, however, is disheartened by the praise for Imu. She lets out a frustrated sigh, thinking to herself that none of her own attacks managed to land. Orin approaches with an outstretched hand, telling her not to say that, as she did really well. Imu, smiling brightly beside him, agrees, adding that she was amazed by Patricia's movements. Their unexpected encouragement leaves Patricia momentarily stunned and speechless. Suddenly, a man's voice calls out from the edge of the woods, greeting them and noting their hard work. Imu's face lights up as she recognizes him, crying out, "Dad!" She runs to her father's side. Orin, startled, asks what's going on, and Imu explains that her father scared her by appearing so suddenly. Her father, addressing Orin, says it's fine and asks if he might have a word with him for a moment. Sometime later, the two men sit at a table. Imu's father asks directly about his daughter's compatibility. Orin looks at him and states that wonderful is the only word for it. He then declares his intention to teach Imu swordsmanship from now on. The announcement leaves Imu's father completely stunned. His stunned silence prompts Orin to ask if something is wrong. The man quickly recovers, brushing off the concern as nothing before changing the subject to the main reason for their meeting. He looks at Orin earnestly and states that he would like to borrow his wisdom. His request becomes more specific as he explains there is something he wants Orin to look into. The man internally reflects on the gravity of the task, a formal request for an investigation that has come not only from the kingdom, but from the islanders as well. On a sun-drenched island shore, a young woman with long, light hair named Imu cheerfully announces her return to a thatched roof hut, calling out for her father. A muscular man in a grass skirt steps out to greet her, welcoming her home. Nearby, Orin asks Imu's father about the mysterious object he had mentioned. The father thanks Orin for coming to investigate, to which Orin replies that he is quite curious about it himself. He gestures for the group to follow him, explaining that the object is something no one in the village has ever seen. Because of its unfamiliar nature, they were afraid to move it carelessly. The man leads Orin, Patricia, and Imu away from the village and into a dense, wooded area. They arrive at a rocky clearing near a stream, where a small, dark object sits unnaturally among the pale stones. As Orin and Patricia lean in for a closer look, Imu's father points to the object, a small, black cube. This is it, he confirms. Orin's gaze sharpens with focus. He kneels beside the cube. Watching from a few paces back, the father asks cautiously if it is dangerous. Orin, his attention fixed on the item, calmly replies, "It's fine." Picking up the small black object, Orin holds it between his fingers for inspection. He looks up and announces with certainty, "This is a magic tool." A magic tool, by definition, is a special item created by infusing it with a considerable amount of magical power. Patricia echoes the term in surprise, while Imu murmurs, "Magical power." In awe, still examining the cube, Orin adds, "And this is quite a rare one." He confirmed her theory, addressing the islander Imu. Patricia, standing beside him, had correctly deduced that a magic tool allows anyone to effectively use magic. Continuing his explanation, Orin elaborated that the tools contain magical circuits, which is why they are so difficult to produce and rare on the market. The islander man, intrigued, then asked what specific kind of magic this particular cube possessed. In response, he revealed its function. "This is a spatial magic tool," he announced, explaining that by pouring magical power into it, one could store far more inside than its small size would suggest. To prove his point to the assembled islanders and Patricia, he simply said, "Let me show you." He focused his intent, and a faint aura of magical energy began to coalesce around him. The young sage then placed the small black cube onto a large water skin. As he channeled his power, a complex magical sigil flared to life, and the water skin began to distort, being pulled into the tiny object. As the knight James watched in disbelief, asking how such a thing was possible, Orin calmly explained that the infused magical power creates a pocket dimension inside the box. The demonstration, however, raised a new question. The islander man wondered aloud why such a valuable item was simply abandoned in the river, prompting Patricia to suggest its source must be somewhere upstream. Patricia seized the idea with excitement, declaring their intent to trace the item's origin. Orin looked toward the river's source, noting that upstream lay to the east, and proposed they go investigate. Hearing the proposal, Imu's hand shot up. "I'm coming too," she announced with determination, surprising Orin, who had asked if she intended to join them. She beams with excitement, declaring her eagerness to learn all about the outside world. The Islander man listens to her, acknowledging her resolve with a simple understood. As they prepare to depart, his voice calls out a final piece of advice, urging them to be careful. Heeding his words, the trio, Orin, Patricia, and Imu, venture into the dense, unfamiliar woods, beginning their journey upstream. As they navigate the thick undergrowth, Imu's eyes dart around, taking in the new sights with a mix of wonder and caution, while Patricia and Orin remain focused on the path ahead. Her gaze remains fixed forward, scanning the path as the group presses on, the sound of their steps muffled by the forest floor. Suddenly, she halts, her arm extending to point at something obscured by the trees. She calls out, her question hanging in the air. Following her gesture, Orin pushes through the foliage. A grin spreads across his face as he confirms their discovery with a single word: jackpot. His discovery is a solitary, dilapidated wooden building, its structure weathered by time. Orin observes that it appears quite old. Gazing upon the structure, Patricia voices her unease, remarking that there is something unsettling about it. Imu concurs, adding that it feels somehow ominous. Orin, however, remains pragmatic. He notes that fortunately, there are no monsters nearby, and suggests they search the building for clues about the magic tool's origin as he pushes the door open. Stepping inside, he and his companions found the interior in a state of advanced decay. The walls were cracked and stained, with debris littering the floor, drawing exclamations of surprise at the terrible condition. As he took in the scene, Orin's mind raced. He observed that the structure appeared far older than either the port town or the shipwreck, wondering if it could have been built before the previous king's reign. This possibility deeply concerned him. Sensing his unease, Patricia turned to him, calling out his title with a worried expression. Her attention was then drawn to something on the floor. "Look at this," she urged. Orin approached, identifying the find as some kind of document. He lamented that it was so deteriorated that most of the text was illegible, though he could just barely make out the final line. He squinted at the faded script, slowly reading the two words he could decipher. Osborne Rydia? Patricia immediately questioned if it was a person's name. Orin confirmed it likely was, adding with sudden realization that the name Osborne matched the one written on the piece of wood he had found earlier. Imu, who had been listening quietly, recalled the wood piece from the mainland. Patricia, looking between them, voiced the question on both their minds. What does this mean? A look of determination settled on Orin's face. He declared that this name, Osborne Rydia, was the key to solving the island's mysteries. To do so, he stated, they would need to investigate this person seriously. He looked out towards the sea, the entire island coming into view, and concluded that for an investigation of this magnitude, they would need a few more hands. 1 week after the audience with King Giadis, the investigation into the country's suspicious movements continues. The members of the Golden Generation were conducting their own inquiries, and the reconnaissance report from the Frontier Knights has just been concluded. Inside a well-appointed room, Jacqueline, the Witch of 1,000 Faces, sits across from the Night Blitz. She begins their debrief, asking him about his side of the investigation. Noticing his dejected expression, she asks what happened. Blitz explains that he went to observe the very honor students that the king had been praising so highly. Jacqueline presses further, asking for his assessment as a knight. He confirms that he watched their sword training, but his tone is heavy with disappointment. His judgment is scathing. He declares that their swordsmanship was worse than a theatrical performance and highly questionable. She agrees with his assessment. Taking a sip of tea, Jacqueline surmises that, based on the king's tone, the top-ranked classes must be filled with the children of well-bred lords and ladies. Blitz confirms her theory, adding that his own reconnaissance revealed that students with far better aptitude were relegated to lower-ranked classes. He presents a document to her, pointing to the date for this year's grade announcements. Reading it, Jacqueline concludes that grades are being determined by family status, not actual ability. As she processes this, she notices the announcement is later than usual. A sudden, shocking realization dawns on her as she connects the timing. The date is the day after Professor Orin retired. He confirms her suspicion with a grim expression. Blitz states that it's as if the Academy was deliberately waiting for the professor to leave. The final piece falls into place for Jacqueline. She declares that the truth of Professor Orin's wrongful dismissal now seems to be beyond any doubt. As she sat across the table from him, Blitz got straight to the point, addressing her directly by name. He explained that he had received a report from the Knight Commander the previous day, but that there was something else of grave importance he needed to share. The Knight delivered this shocking news. The Giadis Kingdom was planning to launch a war of aggression in the near future. The revelation struck Jacqueline with the force of a physical blow. She cried out in disbelief, demanding to know what on earth was happening to their country. He confirmed her fears, adding that the Knight Commander himself might be involved. Jacqueline correctly recalled that the current commander is the husband of Headmistress Rose. Her response was immediate and drastic. She suggested that if things had come to this, they should just abandon the country, even offering to set up trap magic to sabotage the knights. This decisive offer was met not with agreement, but with a quiet, heartfelt thank you from Blitz, leaving Jacqueline utterly bewildered by his reaction. She recoiled, exclaiming that he was creeping her out and demanding to know what was wrong with him. He confessed that while he thought he was prepared to do what was necessary to improve the kingdom, his resolve was faltering. He continued, admitting his heart was wavering because he still wanted to believe in his country. Hearing her candid, unvarnished opinion, he explained, was a relief. He also expressed his gratitude for her always accepting his monster subjugation requests, calling it a huge help. As he spoke, a flustered Jacqueline found herself silently questioning why she only ever took requests from him. Flustered, Jacqueline turns away from Blitz, insisting that nothing is wrong when he asks what's on her mind. Meanwhile, under the bright sun and rustling palm trees of Roche Island, a question hangs in the air about the day's agenda. Oren, standing with Patricia and Emu, provides the answer. He announces that the person King Estrada mentioned, the one who will be in charge of the investigation, has been decided. He explains that this will be their first time meeting them. Standing beside him, Patricia confesses that she is a little nervous about the encounter. Emu, looking out towards the sea, wonders aloud what kind of person they will be, speculating that since the kingdom chose them, it might be a strong knight. Her train of thought is interrupted as she spots something on the horizon. With a gasp, she points towards the water, asking if that is a ship. A young woman arrives from a small boat that has come ashore. She apologizes for keeping them waiting and introduces herself as Claire Sandert, stating that she will be in charge of the Roche Island investigation from this day forward. Oren looks at the newcomer, a hint of surprise on his face as he lets out a questioning sound. He startles Claire, who immediately apologizes for staring. She explains that Mr. Grover spoke very highly of him, and that she's glad to see he seems like a nice person now that they've met. Oren calmly tells her to relax. After composing herself, Claire formally introduces herself to the group. Oren reciprocates, followed by Patricia and Emu. With introductions complete, they all express their eagerness to work together. He finds her long-standing interest in the island reassuring. Claire explains that she has actually been fascinated with Roche Island since she was a child and has been researching it for some time. She quickly adds, with a slight blush, that it might just be a personal hobby or simple curiosity. Regardless, she insists that if she can be of any use, she would love to help the group. Oren readily accepts her offer, telling her it would be a great help to have more people with her dedication. Claire reacts with surprised delight. As they speak, Emu approaches from the side, calling out to get their attention. She walks up to Claire and directly asks about her sleeping arrangements for the night. Overhearing the question, Oren turns to Claire to discuss her accommodations. He confirms that he heard she would be staying at their house and asks if she's all right with that, warning her that the dwelling is rather old-fashioned. With a bright smile and a cheerful gesture, she dismisses his concern entirely, declaring that she will be perfectly fine since she is accustomed to communal living. The news elicits varied reactions. Patricia is visibly taken aback, murmuring to herself about another woman joining them in the same house. Emu, however, is pleased, exclaiming that things will become more lively. Oren simply agrees, stating that it's good. With the lodging settled, Oren declares that it's time to proceed. He suggests they head into the island's interior immediately, and Claire gives a firm sound of agreement. Just as they are about to set off, she stops him, remembering another task. She explains that she actually has something to deliver, an item entrusted to her by Mr. Grover. Her announcement of a delivery from Mr. Grover caught Oren by surprise. He looked towards her, his expression a mixture of curiosity and confusion as he processed the name. From Grover? Within a glowing crystal ball, the face of Oren Edwards comes into focus. From the other end of the magical connection, Grover Hurston's voice calls out, addressing him as Professor Oren. He smiles, confirming that the sound quality is good. He tells Grover that their experiment appears to have been a success. Oren then turns to Claire Sandert, who stands beside him holding a small case, and thanks her for the delivery. She clarifies that it was Mr. Grover who had asked her to bring it. The device is a communication magic tool, a prototype Oren had asked Grover to prepare to facilitate smoother reporting between the island and the kingdom. It allows for conversations over the vast distance, though Oren muses that the magical tool engineer, Wendell, could likely improve upon the design. Through the crystal, Grover asks if this was Oren's first time meeting Claire, and if there were any issues. Oren looks down at the device and assures him that there were no problems at all. Grover's relief is audible as, elsewhere, Patricia comments on how nice Claire is, noting that she is already getting along well with both her and Emu. With the initial checks complete, Grover's tone becomes more serious. He shifts the conversation to the main report concerning the man named Osborne Rydia, the very person Oren had inquired about when he first applied to be a researcher. Leaning forward intently, Oren asks if he found anything. From a communication tool on the table, Grover's voice simply replies, yes. His expression sharpens as he listens to the first piece of information. Osborne Rydia was once the Vice Knight Commander of the Reason Kingdom. Grover continues his report from a document, revealing that Osborne suddenly disappeared about 15 years ago. Oren presses for more, asking what he is doing now. Grover hesitates, beginning to explain what his investigation has uncovered. As the communication with the kingdom continues, Oren sits alone, pondering the core of the mystery. He questions why the Reason Kingdom would not conduct a search for a man of Vice Knight Commander status after his disappearance. Through the magical communication device, Grover Hurston offers his guess. He suggests that perhaps Osborne was abandoned during a secret mission that the kingdom did not want other countries to learn about. Oren considers this, then offers his own theories. He posits that another possibility is that Osborne simply fled the country. Or perhaps, he muses, the Vice Knight Commander was caught in a storm near Roche Island. Grover's voice cuts through the speculation with a startling revelation. He confirms that Osborne is, in fact, alive and is currently on the very island Oren now inhabits. Stunned by the definitive report, Oren exclaims in disbelief, admitting that his own ideas were merely hypothetical. His mind races, connecting the news about Osborne to the shipwreck that involved a princess and a Vice Knight Commander. He wonders if Osborne could have been on that ship. Deciding that more investigation is needed, he informs Grover that he will continue the inquiry on his end and thanks him for the information. With the communication ended, Oren smirks to himself. The mystery of what truly happened has thoroughly piqued his curiosity. He then turns his attention to the day's task. Addressing Patricia, Claire, and Emu, he announces that they will visit Padgel Village to formally introduce Ms. Claire to the other villagers. As they walk toward the village, Claire admits to being a little nervous. Oren reassures her, confident that her bright personality will allow her to get along with everyone immediately. The group, led by Oren and guided by Emu, approaches the entrance to the village, its thatched roof buildings visible just ahead. As he and Claire arrived at the village, two locals, a shirtless man and a woman in a dark top, spotted them. The woman exclaimed in surprise, while the man recognized Mr. Oren and his companions. The man's attention immediately went to the newcomer, excitedly pointing out that they had a new person. The woman beside him remarked on Claire's beauty, while another villager asked when she had arrived. Responding to the warm welcome, Claire introduced herself, stating that she was from the Estrada Kingdom and asking them to treat her kindly. Oren, observing the interaction, felt a sense of relief, realizing there was likely nothing to worry about. With the introductions handled, he informed Claire that he was going to speak with the village chief and that he was counting on her. She readily agreed. Moments later, Oren entered the chief's dwelling. He greeted the elderly woman, who was seated on the floor, noting that it had been a while. She looked up, asking what brought him to her today. He stated his purpose clearly. He had come to request permission to build a pier at the landing area. He explained that if multiple ships could dock at once, it would be far easier to bring doctors and medical supplies from the mainland. The chief listened with a stern expression, taking in his proposal. After a moment, she replied that she understood. She would grant permission to build the pier, acknowledging its benefit to the village, but she warned that the other villagers might find it hard to accept. Oren was surprised by her quick agreement. The chief then revealed a personal motivation, confessing that her own daughter's past situation had once made her break out in a cold sweat from fear and helplessness. Her face hardened with the memory, as she stated firmly that she did not want others to go through the same ordeal. Seeing his gratitude, the chief then offered more help, stating that he would need workers and that she would reach out to the men in the village with free time. Overcome with appreciation, Oren bowed his head deeply, thanking her. He asked Claire how she's finding the village. She replies that everyone has been very kind and she is moved by their welcome. Holding up a large gourd, she expresses fascination with the local vegetables, noting their unique ecosystem compared to the mainland, and says she's looking forward to cooking with them. Hearing her enthusiasm, he mentions that he's heard she's a skilled cook. Claire happily confirms, stating she loves both making and eating food. Nearby, the young islander, Emu, observes their friendly exchange. As she watches them, a thought occurs to Emu. Looking at them now, Claire seems like the professor's young wife. Without thinking, she blurts this observation out loud, startling both Oren and Claire. A flustered but determined Claire then declares that she will indeed fulfill the role of the professor's young wife, much to Oren's confusion. When asked what such a role entails, Claire, blushing, suggests she could wake the professor up every morning. She insists she can do it, even as Oren tells her she doesn't need to worry about him that way. She bristles at the thought that Patricia seems more like his little sister, emphatically denying it to herself. Meanwhile, far away in the Geodis Kingdom's Ley Nor Cathedral, a figure contemplates recent events. They trust that those two are handling things well, but admit that the reports from Blitz and Jacqueline were surprising. The figure is revealed to be the Saintess, Elise, who is meeting with one of her allies. The goggled girl states that she has recently been telling adventurers about the kingdom's current situation. Elise confirms she has been doing the same, spreading information to the people who come to the church. They both fall silent for a moment, a shared look of grim determination on their faces. Elise concludes that for now, this is about all they can do. Sensing her companion's unease, she offers a listening ear, telling her she will listen to any worries she might have. Her companion looks up, considering the offer. She admits that while she might not be very reliable, she thinks it's better to talk about anything they can, since they are currently trying to move against the kingdom itself. The young woman with the goggles stood silently, her expression troubled. Across the table, Elise calmly sipped her tea, her eyes closed as she conceded a point. "You're right," she murmured. Her mind raced, consumed by a single, frantic question. What should I do? She desperately wanted to help, to solve Elise's problem, but a hesitation held her back. Her imagination supplied the reason for her pause. If Elise's issue was something as personal as being unable to confess her feelings to someone she admires, the emotional fallout would be too much for her to handle. The thought caused her to let out an involuntary gasp. "Even if you have such feelings for Professor Orin," she blurted out, "you must have been so disappointed." Elise's eyes widened, her own thoughts catching up to the goggled girl's guess. "It's Professor Orin. I knew it." She froze, the word echoing in her mind. Disappointed? Her sudden change in demeanor did not go unnoticed. "What's wrong?" Elise asked, concerned. The goggled girl flinched, quickly trying to cover her tracks. It's nothing." She quickly tried to steer the conversation back, agreeing with Elise about Professor Orin being unfairly kicked out of the academy. She added that he would surely be fine wherever he went, but Elise's somber, downcast gaze suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. Seeing her friend's continued distress, the goggled girl's expression hardened with resolve. Her hand rested on the table as she prepared to make a serious statement. "There's something I need to tell you today." She then looked Elise straight in the eye and delivered the news. "I'm thinking of leaving this country." The declaration hung in the air, leaving Elise utterly stunned. Stunned by her friend's declaration, Elise listens as the goggled girl explains her reasoning. She states that she cannot hand over the magic tool she has created, as she has come to fundamentally disagree with the country's methods. Elise quietly asks if she has a destination in mind. The goggled girl, whom Elise addresses as Wendell, turns to leave the sunlit room. She announces her plan. She is going to the Estrada Kingdom, where Professor Orin is located, and promises to contact Elise as soon as she arrives. Elise is left speechless for a moment, processing the sudden departure. Seeing her friend's hesitation, Wendell asks what she intends to do now. Wendell observes that Elise is still wavering, but offers her unwavering support, promising to wait for her forever. Touched by this, Elise's resolve hardens. She confirms that she understands and now plans to meet with both Jacqueline and Blitz to discuss their next moves. With their paths decided, a gentle smile forms on Elise's face as she agrees. They bid each other a warm farewell, promising to see each other again. As night falls, the moon hangs in the sky, a silent witness to the profound realization that everything is changing for the country and for everyone within it. On the southeast coast of Roche Island, Orin, Claire, and Emu arrive at the site of a massive shipwreck. Claire looks upon the decaying vessel with awe, moved by the sight. Orin remarks that it's a spectacle one can't see from the mainland. He then asks if they've already investigated the interior. Claire explains that they handed over everything they could find that might be a clue to the ship's owner to the Kingdom of Estrada. Emu listens quietly beside them. She adds that visiting the shipwreck as part of the island tour was the right choice. Seeing her excitement, Emu playfully remarks that Claire looks like she's having fun. His attention then shifts to Emu, and Orin asks with concern if she's feeling all right. She reassures him with a smile that she is fine, and he seems relieved by her answer. His relief is cut short by a sudden realization. He asks Claire if something happened to Emu at this ship before. As Claire begins to explain that Emu was here a while back, Orin's eyes widen, and he urgently shouts for Claire to get back, leaving her startled and confused. A massive, pale tentacle erupts from the churning water, lunging with incredible speed. Orin acts instantly, pulling Claire back just as the appendage slams down where she had been standing moments before. The sudden appearance of the colossal creature leaves the girls in shock. Claire cries out in disbelief, questioning why a giant squid would appear so suddenly in the shallows. Holding Claire protectively, Orin analyzes the situation, noting that a giant squid should inhabit the deep sea and that it wasn't here on his last visit. Behind them, a distraught Emu apologizes. Orin tells her not to worry and to wait there for a moment. His expression hardens with determination. He calmly states that he will take care of this quickly. He steps forward, drawing a sword and creating a barrier between the creature and the two women. However, he senses that something is strange, noting that he feels no hostility from the giant squid at all. Behind him, Claire observes that while it looked like it was about to attack her, the tentacle stopped at the last moment. He remains on high alert, shouting for Patricia and Emu to stay back. Behind him, a startled Claire urges him to ready his weapon, but Orin hesitates, observing that even with the others glaring at it, the colossal creature is not attacking. Then, with a great splash, the squid's massive tentacles churn the water as it abruptly turns away from the shipwreck. It retreats swiftly, disappearing beneath the waves toward the open sea, leaving only ripples behind. Watching it go, Claire turns to Orin, asking what the strange encounter was all about. He considers the event, concluding that the creature's behavior was too unnatural for a simple monster. It seemed as if it had only appeared to warn them away from the shipwreck. Despite the warning, Orin decides they must proceed. He tells Claire they need to hurry and investigate the shipwreck, as they don't know when the giant squid might attack again. She agrees, and they prepare to enter the vessel's interior. Inside the surprisingly well-preserved cabin, Claire looks around in awe. Orin reminds her to be careful where she steps, noting that the floor is slippery. Her awe is cut short as her boot loses purchase on the slick floorboards. She lets out a cry as she begins to fall, and Orin shouts her name in alarm. He reacts instantly, his arm wrapping around her waist to catch her. Held securely, A surprised and flustered Claire looks up at him, still in his grasp. The blushing young woman quickly insists that she is fine. Seeing her expression, Oren immediately apologizes for the sudden closeness. Elsewhere, Patricia Grayson suddenly clutches her stomach, a pained groan escaping her as it growls audibly. Beside her, Claire Sandred expresses her concern, asking if she is in pain. Patricia, clenching her fists, struggles to compose herself. Meanwhile, back on the shipwreck, Oren suddenly stiffens, sensing the presence of a third party. He whirls around, his eyes wide with alarm as he wonders if they have been watched this entire time. Noticing his abrupt change in demeanor, Claire asks him if something is wrong. He forces a smile, dismissing her concern by saying it's nothing. Internally, however, he questions if it was just his imagination. As he looks over the wreckage, he resolves that he needs to be more on guard from now on. Later that night, a glowing communication orb illuminates Oren's room. He turns shirtless as the voice of Grover Hurston emerges, apologizing for the late contact. Oren replies that he was about to do the same and asks what is going on. Now seated and dressed, Oren listens as Grover reports that a wyvern appeared near the border between the Estrada Kingdom and a neighboring country. Oren notes that this is quite troublesome, but Grover quickly clarifies that the wyvern has already been defeated, surprising him. Grover elaborates through the orb, explaining that by the time the knights arrived on the scene, the massive creature was already frozen solid. He then voices his theory. They believe a magic user with power rivaling Jacqueline has entered Estrada. Oren considers this new information. He agrees that it must have been a very powerful magic user, and then offers his own speculation. It might actually be Jacqueline herself. Grover expresses his doubt, reminding Oren that Jacqueline is known to be a difficult person. He questions why she would bother subjugating a wyvern in a place with no connection to the Geodis kingdom. Considering her personality, Oren seeks more information. He asks Grover if there's any record of Estrada requesting assistance from Geodis, wondering aloud if Blitz might have made another request on his own. Grover confirms that it's true, there was no official request. Based on this, Oren concludes that she must have acted on her own. He reasons that if it was indeed Jacqueline, then there is nothing to worry about. He shifts the topic from his previous line of thought, asking Grover through the communication orb if there are any records of giant squid monster sightings around the island. Grover's voice crackles back, laced with alarm. He confirms they actually encountered one earlier and urgently asks if Oren is all right, expressing surprise that such a monster, which he's never heard of, would appear. Unfazed, Oren dismisses the concern, stating it's not a problem. He explains that he sensed something strange about the creature, speculating it might have been a non-aggressive individual, but still asks Grover to gather any information he can about monster summoning. Visible within the glowing orb, Grover agrees to investigate the matter thoroughly. Oren accepts, then turns his attention to Jacqueline, who has been listening quietly, and adds that he is also curious about this situation. His gaze lingers on her as a thought crosses his mind. If Jacqueline truly was the one who defeated the wyvern, he muses he will have to praise her significantly for the feat. Meanwhile, in the Estrada Kingdom, a cheerful young woman with goggles pushed up on her forehead recalls her own startling arrival. She remarks that just when she thought she had finally made it, she was suddenly attacked by something outrageous. The source of that outrageous event stands before them, a massive wyvern completely encased in jagged spires of ice. Jacqueline, her back to the viewer, observes her handiwork and remarks that her title, which of 1,000 changes, is not just for show. She then turns to her companion, addressing her as Wendell, and asks if she didn't find the situation strange. A confused Wendell asks for clarification, questioning if Jacqueline means the sudden appearance of a wyvern in this specific area. Exactly, Jacqueline affirms, her expression turning serious. She explains that even a wyvern of this level is a fairly intelligent creature and shouldn't recklessly attack humans. That discrepancy is what concerns her. Wendell, however, seems less concerned with the wyvern's motives, dismissing its power by calling it just a wyvern of this level. She confidently lists the only people she believes could easily defeat such a creature alone: Professor Oren, Blitz, and Jacqueline herself, asserting that she can't think of anyone else. She casually dismisses the creature, musing that a wyvern is just a big, fire-breathing lizard and likely wouldn't be that difficult to defeat. Her companion internally scoffs at the oversimplification. Despite her casual tone, she concedes that she also felt something was strange about the wyvern. Its sudden attack on a city center is definitely unusual behavior. She then posits a more sinister theory, that someone might have been controlling the beast, and perhaps they themselves were the intended targets. Her companion's expression turns serious as she considers this possibility. She reasons that if someone can indeed control a giant beast like the wyvern at will, then they must be a formidable magic user. Jacqueline proposes they continue this line of thought with the professor. Wendell agrees immediately, urging that they must hurry to share their discovery. The two then walk off together down the city street, intent on their new objective. On the island, Patricia notices a change in Oren's demeanor and asks him what is wrong. He simply tells her to listen. Continuing from his instruction, Oren smiles and explains that the island is about to get much livelier. He holds a large, spotted fruit in his arm. His cryptic statement leaves Patricia looking utterly perplexed. Her confusion is broken by the sight of two figures on the shore. She recognizes them immediately, calling out in surprise to Jacqueline and Wendell. On the beach, the two newcomers stand. Jacqueline, in her large witch's hat and dark dress, greets Patricia, remarking that it has been a long time. Beside her, Wendell, wearing goggles pushed up on her head, agrees, adding that Patricia looks well. A short time later, Oren introduces the two arrivals to Emu and Claire. He explains that Jacqueline and Wendell have offered their assistance in investigating Roche Island, noting that it is Emu and Claire's first time meeting them. Claire formally welcomes them to the island, stating that she looks forward to working with them. She admits that while they can always use more help, adding 2 more people puts their current house over capacity, creating a problem with living arrangements. As she speaks, Patricia looks as if she is about to interject. Before she can, Oren presents a grand solution. He points out that with an investigation team arriving soon, they will need to secure more living space and food supplies anyway. He then proposes that they create their own village. The idea is met with varied reactions. Emu is thrilled at the prospect of many people coming to the island. Patricia processes the statement, realizing they will build their own village right there. Claire, meanwhile, sees the logic, concluding that if everyone cooperates on farming and household chores, they can all focus more effectively on the investigation. With a warm smile, Oren addresses his 2 newly arrived companions. He apologizes for putting them to work so soon, explaining that it looks like they will be starting the village construction immediately. He leads them to a vast, clear expanse of land bordered by trees. He proudly announces that he has found the perfect open space for building a village, eliciting an impressed "wow" from one of his companions. Jacqueline notes with approval that a stream is flowing nearby, making it a definitively nice spot. Beside her, Wendell, brimming with excitement, declares that it sounds fun and suggests they set up tents for the night right away. Down by the water's edge, Oren joins Emu and Claire, who are already resting by the cool stream. The group takes a moment to appreciate the peaceful setting before beginning their work. Without delay, the hard labor begins. Jacqueline, Claire, and Oren work in unison, hauling heavy wooden beams and other construction materials across the clearing. Elsewhere, Wendell and Oren carry another large log, their expressions set with determination as they contribute to the initial setup of their new base. After a period of focused effort, a large, sturdy tent stands complete against the backdrop of the forest, a testament to their efficient teamwork. Oren and Jacqueline stand back to admire their handiwork. He remarks that their skills have improved since their student days, and she agrees, noting they did well. In the background, Emu lets out a jubilant cheer. As evening falls, the group gathers, visibly tired. Wendell declares she's completely exhausted, and Claire agrees, adding that she's very hungry. Oren praises everyone for their great work and announces it's time to eat and prepare for tomorrow, to which Emu enthusiastically agrees. A hearty meal is laid out before them. A large piece of roasted meat, a bowl of stew, and bread, a well-deserved reward for their hard day's labor. As night falls over the newly established campsite, Patricia, Wendell, and Emu enjoy a warm meal together by the fire, finding a moment of peace after their long journey. The conversation soon turns to the events that brought them here. Wendell recounts to Oren that chasing after him was an ordeal, complicated by a sudden wyvern attack. Jacqueline adds her own complaint, questioning why he left the country without telling them anything. Oren offers an apology, explaining that he was acting on impulse at the time and wasn't thinking clearly. He then smiles, expressing his sincere gratitude that they cared enough about him to follow him all the way to this remote island. Jacqueline dismisses his thanks, stating that she was also fed up with the methods employed by Giadis. She then reveals that Blitz and Elise should be joining them soon as well. The mention of their other friends gives Oren pause. He considers that if the Holy Knight and the Saints were to leave the country, Giadis would likely use all its power to stop them. Jacqueline points out that her and Wendell's departure was less complicated, as neither of them have deep ties to the government. A voice reflects on the situation, noting that even so, losing talented young people is hardly something to be praised. Wendell admits that, honestly, she can't be certain they will succeed. Her doubt prompts Oren to voice his own concern, asking aloud if those two will really be able to make it to the island. Jacqueline, however, remains confident. She asserts that even with the risks, Blitz and Elise are not the type of people to simply do nothing. He processes her words under the full moon. Relocating would be tantamount to defection for them. Realizing this, Oren concludes that for now, all they can do is observe the situation and wait to see what happens. As the group settles in for the night, the isolated island rests silently in the vast, star-dusted sea, a remote sanctuary holding an uncertain future. Within the austere walls of the Giadis Kingdom's Night Order Executive Meeting Room, a tense discussion is underway. A voice suddenly cuts through the tension, filled with indignation. It is Blitz, and he declares the situation unacceptable. His outburst is met with a calm rebuke from Captain Haig, who sits at a nearby desk. Haig admonishes Blitz for raising his voice, stating that such behavior tarnishes the esteemed name of a holy knight. The subject of their dispute is revealed to be a wyvern that had recently appeared near the border with the Estrada Kingdom. Blitz explains that he had recommended dispatching knights to subjugate the creature, but his proposal was denied. In response, Captain Haig coolly asks what point Blitz is trying to make. He stares back intently, leveling an accusation. The real reason for an action was to prepare a new Knight Order formation for an upcoming invasion war. He thrusts forward a formation chart, demanding to know why the 5 names written on it, all students, are being placed on the front lines. Haig remains unfazed. He questions if Blitz is merely upset that Academy students are part of the new formation, asserting that they were chosen simply because they are excellent talent. Blitz vehemently refutes this, his voice strained with worry. He insists that the students listed, beginning with Kyle Arnolord, are clearly lacking the ability to survive on a real battlefield. He continues his impassioned plea, arguing that the students lack the fundamental spirit of knighthood. They have no sense of duty to protect the country or its people, he insists, making the battlefield far too dangerous for them. In response to his subordinate's outburst, Captain Haig's gaze narrows. With a single, cold command, he tells Blitz to be smart. As the tension between the 2 knights simmers, Oren quietly excuses himself and walks away down the grand corridor. He overhears a warning meant for Blitz. Openly criticizing the country's policies could lead to arrest. The voice also notes that dissent regarding the invasion war preparations was already present within the Knight Order. He continues down the hall, but his mind lingers on the sight of the other knights. He recognized their expressions, resigned eyes that could only obey out of fear. The realization weighs heavily on him. Covering his face, he thinks to himself that at this rate, the country is doomed. Seeking a moment of clarity, he decides to find Elise for some tea. Moments later, over tea, Elise listens to his account with wide-eyed disbelief. She finds it hard to accept that the once proud Knight Order has fallen into such a state. Oren clarifies the grim reality for her. He explains that in the coming war, the possibility of her being dragged into it, as the Holy Maiden, is extremely high, adding that it would be more accurate to say she would be used. He urges her to leave the country soon for her own safety. As for himself, he declares his intention to stay a while longer and attempt to persuade the kingdom's leadership to abandon their foolish scheme. Elise closes her eyes, reluctantly accepting his point. After a moment of thought, she opens her eyes with renewed determination. She acknowledges his plan and declares that she, too, will think more about what she can do to help. As their conversation concludes, Oren shifts topics, asking if Wendell said anything of note when they last parted. Elise simply tells him to be careful as well. He stood with Elise, who continued her questioning. She asked if something had happened between him and Jacqueline, but he simply replied, "No, nothing." Taking this in, she then inquired about Wendell. Oren confirmed that they had discussed the country's movements. As he looked at her, he mused that while Elise's spirit of service was respectable and Blitz's chivalric spirit was admirable, there was an unspoken reservation. His expression turned somber, his eyes closing in thought. Elise, sensing his concern, looked at him with worried eyes and asked if Jacqueline and Wendell were going to struggle in the times ahead. Elsewhere, as if on cue, the which Jacqueline stood by as the goggled engineer, Wendell let out a sudden, loud sneeze. The event seemed to register with Oren, who turned his head in confusion. Oren stretches under the morning sun outside his tent, remarking on the beautiful day. Nearby, Claire's Sandra greets him, explaining that she was so excited about the day's plans that she woke up early. She suddenly remembers something, telling Professor Oren that she has something she wants to show him. From a distance, he wonders what it could be. As they walk, she places a finger to her lips, hushing him. Oren asks if she discovered something during the night. Claire confirms it was something like that, calling it a major discovery. Her discovery is revealed. Inside one of the tents, Emu and Elise are fast asleep, wrapped in a peaceful embrace. Back outside, Claire asks Oren if the sight isn't incredibly cute. He concedes that it is rather adorable. Pleased, Claire says she will go wake up Wendell and Jacqueline, and Oren agrees, telling her to wake the other two as well. His attention then shifts toward the woods as he senses a strong magical presence. Realizing who it must be, he smiles, noting that they seem to be awake already. In a clearing, Jacqueline lets out a sharp cry of effort, unleashing a powerful blast of magic from her staff. Wendell sits on a rock nearby, observing her training. She is startled by Oren's voice. He stands nearby, praising her for keeping up with her morning training even after graduation, calling it commendable. He remarks on the impressive caliber of her wind magic, noting that she has refined her power even further. Jacqueline explains the habit from her student days, then calls out to Wendell, teasing that she also became enthusiastic despite claiming she only came because Jacqueline insisted. Oren laughs softly to himself, reflecting that the familiar dynamic between his former students hasn't changed at all. His attention shifts to Wendell, who proudly presents a complex, crystalline object. She exclaims, identifying it as an item for detecting trap-type magic. Oren, intrigued, asks what the magic tool is. He listens intently as she explains that trap-type magic, which creates decoys or renders things invisible to deceive enemies, is said to be difficult to detect even for skilled magic users. Oren looks impressed by the implications. Wendell admits that the device isn't perfect yet, but after a year of work, it's finally taking shape and its accuracy is high. Hearing her report, Jacqueline comments that it sounds promising. Oren agrees, stating that he is looking forward to its completion. He reflects internally on this exchange, realizing that Jacqueline trusts Wendell's skills. He muses that the old, prideful Jacqueline would never have been able to praise a peer so honestly. His thoughts are interrupted when a blushing Jacqueline demands to know what he meant by that. With a gentle smile, Oren simply tells her that she's grown up. As Jacqueline shouts for him to wait, Wendell steps in, announcing that it's about time everyone woke up and that breakfast is ready. After their meal, Oren stands before the group, gesturing to the surrounding barren land. He declares that today, they will begin the construction of a new village. He presents a detailed map, outlining the rough construction plan. It features a port town, a cabin, houses, a bathhouse with a water wheel, a herb farm, and the existing Padgel village. He turns to Wendell, confirming their first step is to build a large port. He then asks for confirmation that Glover is preparing the necessary materials to be sent to the island, to which Wendell affirms. He stands before the dilapidated remains of an old port, the waves lapping against the broken pilings. He explains his plan to use the ruins of this discovered port town as the foundation for their new one. Hearing his plan, Claire Sandrot's eyes widen in understanding. Elise adds that they will need to prepare an environment suitable for large ships to dock. Oren agrees with her assessment, enthusiastically suggesting they head to the site right away. A short time later, they arrive at the coastal ruins, the sound of a cheerful voice announcing their arrival echoing over the landscape. As they survey the area, the goggle-wearing engineer, Wendell, remarks that the island is much larger than it appears from the outside. She speculates aloud whether the previous king of Estrada had planned to send an investigation team or even considered a mass migration to this large, mysterious port. He confirms that he had the exact same thought when he first arrived. Jacqueline, the witch, then interjects, questioning whether the current king was aware of the port's existence. Oren admits he doesn't know for sure, but points out that the ruins themselves bear traces of some past attempt to do something here. Claire then provides an update on that front, reporting that Mr. Glover is currently investigating the old records to uncover the previous king's intentions. However, she confirms that so far, no significant information has emerged. Hearing this, Jacqueline lets out a weary sigh, commenting on how exhausting it is when rulers make such suspicious, clandestine moves. The conversation shifts as Wendell turns to Oren, mentioning that the situation is definitely unsettling. She notes that she managed to avoid getting directly involved in some matter thanks to Blitz's actions. Her comment prompts Oren to ask if something happened with King Els of Geodis. Before Wendell can elaborate, Jacqueline firmly interjects. She advises that rather than worrying about the future, it is better for them all to focus on the immediate work at hand. She stood beside Oren, remarking that for someone facing so many challenges, he looked quite happy. He smiled, agreeing that building a village would certainly keep them busy. Her comments seemed to catch him off guard, and he turned to her, asking with a hint of surprise, "Do I?" He was left with a faint, contemplative smile. Several days passed. Inside a newly constructed building, Oren initiated a call through a magical communication device. "It's been a while, Grover," he said. Grover's image shimmered within the glowing orb, delivering a routine report on the progress of the village's foundation. Oren, holding the sphere, replied that his words were reassuring. Grover then added that he had also secured materials and gathered volunteers for the investigation team. This news piqued his interest. Leaning forward over the table, he asked how many people had applied. Through the orb, Grover specified the number of volunteers, 3 from the Night Order and 2 civilians. He went on to say that while the number wasn't large, it was within his expectations, and he was simply grateful that 5 people had volunteered at all. Oren listened, his expression turning serious as he processed the information. He then asked when the volunteers were expected to arrive. Grover confirmed they should reach the island by the following afternoon. A look of relief crossed Oren's face. That was sooner than he had thought. The extra hands would be a great help. His gaze then sharpened as he noticed something amiss on Grover's armor. He questioned Grover about the state of his armor. From the other side of the communication, Grover's voice explained that they had simply had drills that day. He noted the state of Grover's armor, questioning if it was merely from Estrada Night Order drills. The knight, appearing through the magical orb, apologized for his disheveled appearance, explaining he had no time to change. His apology prompted Oren to ask directly if something had happened. He elaborated on his concern, noting that the Estrada region had long forgotten war, making such intense training seem out of place. In response, Grover shifted the topic, asking if Oren was familiar with a country named Dahart. Oren confirmed his knowledge, recalling that Dahart was located near Estrada. Grover specified that the events he was about to describe took place that very morning. He then revealed the critical information. Dahart had been attacked by a mysterious organization. The news visibly shocked Oren. Grover elaborated that while the attackers had superior numbers, their lack of coordination allowed Dahart's forces to use the terrain to their advantage and force a retreat. Oren considered the report, agreeing with the facts but expressing his own doubts. He found it difficult to believe such a large force was merely a band of thugs, speculating that it could have been the Night Order of another nation. His thoughts continued to race. If it were a Night Order, their reported inadequacy in both sword skills and tactical coordination made no sense. The pieces of the puzzle did not fit together. Meanwhile, in another location, the witch Jacqueline mused to herself, finding it exhausting when rulers made such suspicious moves. Back at his desk, the disparate facts suddenly coalesced into a startling possibility for Orin. His eyes widened as he voiced the dreadful thought. Could the Geodis kingdom be involved? The implication struck him with full force. As images of Blitz and Elise flashed through his mind, he looked to the orb and addressed the knight, beginning to ask about the 5 members of the investigation team. His expression hardened with resolve. Having learned of the danger facing his old comrades, he made a decision. He looked intently at Grover and stated plainly, "I have a favor to ask." Within the Geodis kingdom, the story of the Holy Knight begins at the Knight Order barracks. Inside, Blitz looks upon the rows of injured and bandaged knights resting in their beds. He can only think what a pathetic sight it is. As he observes the grim aftermath, Patricia Grayson approaches, remarking that the state of the soldiers returning from Dahart marks a truly historic defeat that will go down in Giadis' military history. She explains that while the veteran knights were occupied cleaning up another mess, they were attacked, and command made the disastrous decision to put students with virtually no combat experience on the front lines. Patricia continues her frustrated analysis. They recklessly attacked Dahart's mountain defenses and were forced to retreat. She internally blames the academy staff, like Headmistress Arnelord, for their favoritism, and the upper echelons, like Orin, for misjudging the situation. To make matters worse, she notes that Kyle obtained his position as unit commander through connections, leading a unit formed by these very students. From a nearby bed, one of the wounded knights laments that based on pure military strength, it was a war they should not have lost. He concludes that this defeat must have made His Majesty furious. Patricia tries to get Blitz's attention, but he turns away, dismissing the entire affair. He states that it can't even be called a war, but rather just playing pretend. He then begins to walk away down the hall. Patricia calls out his name, demanding to know where he is going. Without turning back, Blitz announces his destination. He is going to see the Knight Commander. The scene shifts to Kyle Arnelord, standing resolute in his armor. An unseen observer expresses the hope that he has surely learned his lesson from this incident, and will now work to ensure the Knight Order can fulfill its proper role. He, now wearing an eye patch over his right eye, addresses Blitz directly. He states his desire for the Knight to lead the vanguard in the next battle. Blitz, taken aback by the proposition, questions the reasoning behind it. The order is a direct appointment from Unit Commander Kyle. The thought of serving under such a man and continuing what he perceives as a ridiculous war fills Blitz with disgust. He clenches his fist, resolving that he must decline. As he stands abruptly to leave his post, a voice calls out for him to wait. He does not wait. Walking alone through the city streets, a sense of despair washes over him. The Geodis he fought to protect feels like it's slipping away, leaving him to question his path forward and what he should do. A voice cuts through his troubled thoughts in the downpour. He turns to see Elise, who calls out his name in surprise. She stands before him, soaked by the rain, and questions why he is out in such weather. She explains that her presence is no coincidence. She had been searching for him. With urgency in her voice, she asks him to accompany her to the cathedral, explaining that there is someone important he needs to meet. His expression remains grim, but he agrees to her request without hesitation. They make their way through the rain-slicked streets toward the towering spires of the city's grand cathedral. Inside the vast, echoing entrance of the holy building, they pause, looking further into its depths. A familiar voice greets them. A knight steps forward, addressing Blitz warmly. Blitz reacts with shock, recognizing the man as Grover. The knight apologizes for the abruptness of the meeting, but immediately directs Blitz's attention to a crystal he holds. The object begins to pulse with a brilliant white light. The tense atmosphere is broken by the sudden appearance of a familiar face. "Hey Blitz, Elise. It's been a while," Orin Edwards says with a calm smile. Blitz is visibly stunned, only able to stammer out, "Professor Orin." From behind, Elise expresses her relief at seeing him well, while Blitz admits that he'd been worried about both of them. Orin's expression grows more serious as he explains his own concerns. He believed they might be struggling with the current state of Geodis, especially Blitz, given his exceptionally strong sense of justice. His words resonate with the young knight, who can only look on in thoughtful silence. After a moment, Orin continues, making a grave accusation. He reveals that he suspected the recent, devastating attack on Dahart might have been orchestrated by Geodis itself. He acknowledges that Blitz and Elise are strong, but notes that for a knight, there is nothing more painful than when their country strays from their convictions. Blitz somberly agrees, affirming the truth in the professor's statement. With their disillusionment confirmed, Orin states his purpose clearly. He wants them to help him uphold justice and inspire positive change within Geodis. Hearing this, Elise, still clutching the glowing crystal, questions his plan. She asks if he intends to simply leave the country, just as their former comrades Wendell and Jacqueline did. She elaborates that thanks to her and Wendell's efforts, many citizens have already begun relocating. Blitz, catching on, asks if the professor is telling them to abandon their nation. Orin sidesteps the question, instead turning his sharp gaze back to Blitz. He asks if, despite the civilian exodus, the upper brass is still focused on planning the next surprise attack. He confirms Orin's suspicions with a simple, resigned yes. Standing by the window, Oren remarks that the military leadership's excitement is pathetic, as they are completely blind to what they should truly be protecting. As Oren speaks, Elise's voice joins the conversation. She explains that preparations have been made in the nation of Estrada to welcome both her and Oren, revealing that she resolved to leave Giadis the moment she learned a certain truth. Hearing her resolve, Oren turns back to Blitz and extends an invitation, suggesting it wouldn't be a bad idea for the night to spend time on the island with him, Wendell, and Jacqueline. Blitz, looking conflicted, replies only with, "If that's what you want." To this hesitant acceptance, Oren quietly affirms that he understands. His quiet understanding seems to galvanize Blitz. The knight's expression shifts to one of resolve as he declares he must first settle some things. He asks Oren for a little more time, promising he will join him afterward. He clarifies his intentions, vowing to fulfill his final responsibility as a holy knight. Oren simply agrees. This decision triggers a memory of a recent, formal hearing. In a grand hall, Holy Knight Blitz stands before his superiors, including the king. The commander, Haig, asks if he understands why he has been summoned, then lays out the charges. 3 days prior, Blitz violated regulations by defying the commander's orders and openly criticized their actions in front of many knights. Blitz confirms the accusations. His admission causes a stir among the assembled knights, who whisper that he must have lost his mind. Haig roars for silence. With the room quieted, he presses Blitz, asking if he is prepared to face the appropriate punishment for his acknowledged insubordination. In the present, Oren recalls this, thinking to himself that Blitz's actions were correct. Facing the commander's question, Blitz delivers his answer. He states that he is prepared and, in light of the incident, will resign from the Knight Order, effective that very day. His declaration of resignation is met with outrage from Commander Haig, who shouts, questioning how a holy knight could betray the people's expectations. The memory fades, and back in the present, Oren tells Blitz that he seems completely unaware of the people's true situation. Taken aback, Blitz can only repeat the phrase, "The people's expectations?" Continuing his address to the stunned officials, Oren reveals that the people are already taking matters into their own hands, with many citizens considering relocating to other countries. One of the men in the assembly reacts with sputtering disbelief. He looks upon them with cold disappointment, calling their willful ignorance utterly absurd. He accuses them of turning a blind eye to the truth, an act that now endangers the entire nation. His words cause a stir among the onlookers, whose attention turns to the silent figure of Blitz. They murmur amongst themselves, questioning if what the knight said was true and wondering about the meaning behind his actions. Ignoring the whispers, Blitz turns his back on the assembly and begins to walk away. As he proceeds down the grand, empty hall, he reflects on his personal oath to become strong and protect the people. He now understands that by staying with the knights, that oath will never be fulfilled. His thoughts are interrupted by Kyle Arnlord, who blocks his path. Kyle remarks with disdain that Blitz is just like his teacher, finding it troublesome when people act on their own initiative. Blitz dismisses him curtly. He states that this is his own decision and that he has no need to explain his destination to Kyle. With a huff, he attempts to walk past. Kyle calls out for him to wait. Ahead, Blitz finds his path blocked by a phalanx of armored knights. Kyle taunts him, questioning if even a holy knight can break through such numbers unharmed. With a baton-like weapon in hand, Kyle asks what Blitz is, questioning if he intends to fight them with the weapons he carries. The standoff is set. Blitz, a lone figure in a cloak, stands resolute before Kyle and a full squad of knights determined to bar his exit by force. Inside the knight headquarters, Oren faces an entire company of armored soldiers, their spears leveled directly at him in a unified, intimidating formation. The confrontation ends in an instant. As Oren calmly walks away, the entire squad of knights lies defeated behind him. Kyle Arnlord, disarmed and on the floor, stares up in disbelief, unable to comprehend what just happened. He can only stammer that it's impossible. He glances back at the stunned unit commander, his expression unreadable. He calmly states that what Kyle has just witnessed is the true power of a holy knight. Leaving the scene of the one-sided battle behind, Oren joins Elise outside. She observes the considerable amount of luggage they have, and he acknowledges it, musing that women seem to require many things for long journeys, a fact he will make a note of. She confirms that everything is proceeding according to their plan. All the luggage has been loaded into the carriage. Oren simply thanks her for the update. His preparations complete, Oren offers a slight smile and declares that it is time for them to depart. Standing before an ornate carriage pulled by 2 horses, they prepare to embark on their journey. Their destination, the Estrada Kingdom. On the afternoon of the day, Oren spoke with Blitz. A massive ship appeared on the horizon. Watching from ashore, Emu and Patricia observed its approach. Patricia marveled at its immense size, while Emu noted that the village's reconstruction would indeed require a great deal of materials and people. Someone remarked that the investigation team's ship had arrived. The large, well-outfitted vessel cut through the waves, drawing ever closer to the island's shore. As it anchored, Oren, accompanied by Jacqueline, Elise, and Patricia, stood on the beach, ready to greet the arrivals. A man with neatly combed hair stepped forward, introducing himself as Bamford, a merchant from Estrada, entrusted with procuring supplies. He warmly encouraged them to ask for any materials they might need from now on. Following him, a man in an apron identified himself as Turner. He explained that he was supervising the house construction on the island and had brought a team of skilled craftsmen from the mainland. Imu looked on in amazement at the sheer number of people who had come. Beside her, Oren smiled and formally welcomed them, stating that his group was looking forward to working with everyone. In response, Bamford addressed Oren, suggesting they quickly unload the materials. He then prepared to introduce the volunteers who had come to join the investigation team. The volunteers were a varied group. A cheerful young woman with feline ears introduced herself as Linda, a cat beast folk. A somewhat timid young man in armor stated his name was Barry. Finally, a confident knight with striking two-tone hair announced he was Kirk, from the Estrada Kingdom Knight Order. More introductions followed. A young man named Donald explained he was a merchant affiliated with Mr. Bamford's trading company. Beside him, a woman with glasses holding a staff introduced herself as Lucia, a magic user. She specified that she specializes in Earth attribute magic and was certain she could be of help. Her professional demeanor suddenly broke as she looked past Donald with wide, admiring eyes. She stammered that she was honored, confessing that she had always admired Lady Jacqueline. Lucia is flustered, blushing as she begs Professor Jacqueline to stop teasing her. Nearby, Patricia observes the exchange, noting to herself that even the formidable Jacqueline seems overwhelmed by the situation. The moment is interrupted when Turner, the construction supervisor, clears his throat. He declares there's no point just standing around and that they should inspect the planned construction site. It is then that the merchant, Bamford, stares in disbelief, finally realizing he is in the presence of Oren Edwards, the renowned sage of Geodis. Oren is led to a vast, cleared expanse of land. Taking in the scale of the area, he quietly acknowledges the potential it holds. Turner, standing beside him, expresses his relief, confirming that with so much space, they can build according to the plan. Oren agrees, suggesting they begin by constructing the quarters for the investigation team, where many people will gather. The plan quickly gains support. Patricia notes that the construction should proceed smoothly. Bamford offers the use of his items, while Lucia and Jacqueline volunteer their magical abilities to assist. Oren expresses his gratitude, finding their offers wonderful. With the initial construction plans settled, Oren's focus shifts. He affirms that they will now be conducting more distant investigations and agrees that they must visit the candidate sites for new bases in order. He elaborates on his strategy, deciding to expand their network of bases in parallel with the village's construction. Linda expresses her excitement at the prospect of an exploration team. Oren explains that because the dangers are unknown, the team must be composed of combat-capable personnel. He then formally assembles the group, declaring that Patricia, Imu, Kirk, Barry, and Linda will form the 5-person exploration team. The announcement has an immediate effect on the new knights. Kirk admits to being nervous, and Barry tells him not to be so tense. Oren observes them, noting that this will be the first proper exploration of Roche Island for the 3 newcomers. He internally reflects on their youthful energy, thinking that while he knew they were young, their reactions are quite refreshing. The moment is broken when Linda teases Barry for being just as nervous, prompting him to defensively tell her to mind her own business. He addresses his newly formed exploration team, his voice sharp and clear. Now, then, let's stay focused. A chorus of agreement follows. With their resolve set, the 5-person team ventures into the dense forest of Roche Island. One of them immediately remarks on how rich with nature the environment is. As they proceed, Barry comments to Kirk that the island feels much larger than it appeared from the outside. Kirk then relays Oren's earlier warning, stating that the monsters are said to become stronger the deeper they go inland. Patricia listens, adding that while the coast has been quiet, they must not let their guard down. This prompts Barry to ask what they should do if they encounter such powerful creatures. Oren turns with a confident smile, declaring that in that case, they will simply scatter them. His casual confidence catches Kirk and Lindo off guard. They can only echo his words in disbelief, questioning if it could really be that simple. Putting their faith in their leader, the group presses onward, deeper into the island's lush, green interior. The dense woods suddenly give way to a vast, unexpected clearing, a marshland stretching out before them. One of the team members expresses surprise, having had no idea such a place existed here. As they stand at the edge of the marsh, both Kirk and Linda sense a change in the atmosphere. Kirk remarks that there is a tense presence, something he has never felt before. Suddenly, the ground gives way beneath Oren's feet. Patricia and Kirk cry out in alarm as he begins to sink. Unfazed, Oren looks down and calmly identifies the hazard. Looks like it's quicksand. He struggles, finding he cannot pull himself out of the quicksand. As Patricia panics over what to do, Kirk sternly tells her not to. With a sharp grunt, Oren unleashes a burst of power, freezing the ground around him. The ground instantly solidifies. A relieved Barry thanks Professor Oren for his quick thinking. Oren explains that he froze the ground so they could simply break the now brittle surroundings and pull him out. Once Oren is free, Kirk addresses the shaken group, reminding them that no matter the situation, they must never panic. He tells them to pull themselves together so they can continue the investigation. As they regroup, Linda's gaze falls upon something in the distance, her curiosity piqued. She has spotted a weather tent. Patricia approaches and examines it, noting that the material is different from the tents used in Padgel Village. Barry recognizes the texture immediately, identifying it as fur from a gano, an animal from the south whose hunting was banned 15 years ago. Oren praises Barry's knowledge, concluding that the tent must be at least that old. He steps towards the dilapidated tent, wondering aloud if they can find any other belongings that might provide clues. He muses that this discovery might be related to Osborne Rydia. Inside, his eyes fall upon a sword lying on the ground. A faint smile crosses his lips as he confirms to himself that he knew it would be here. A closer inspection of the sword's crossguard reveals an inscription, an identification number. Patricia asks what the number is. Linda explains that it's a unique identifier assigned to each knight, which means they might be able to identify the sword's owner and discover their reason for being on the island. As Oren stares at the unearthed sword with wide-eyed shock, his companion Kirk remarks on the significance of the find. Suddenly, the ground erupts. A colossal, pale serpent with pincer-like mandibles bursts forth from the earth. The creature towers over them. Kirk shouts in disbelief at its size, while Barry frantically asks Oren why he is so calm. Unfazed, Oren estimates its length at 20 meters and reassures everyone not to worry. Before anyone else can move, a dark-skinned young woman with flowing light hair leaps into the air, launching herself directly at the monster. With a powerful downward thrust, she plunges her sword deep into the serpent's body, the force of the blow sending viscera flying. The warrior lands and turns to the group, proudly declaring her success to Oren, whom she calls Professor. Oren confirms her training paid off. Patricia exclaims that it was wonderful, while Kirk stares in awe, realizing he has just witnessed true combat. Inspired, Kirk asks if he and the others could also become strong by training under the sage. The victorious warrior, Emu, beams and assures him they absolutely can, a promise Patricia enthusiastically seconds. Listening to their eager discussion, Oren sighs with weary resignation. He thinks to himself that it looks like he is getting more students. Outside the Estrada Kingdom Night Order lodging, one traveler complains of exhaustion after the long walk from the island. Another voice encourages the tired person, identified as Wendell, to have more spirit. This marks the group's arrival and a moment of reunion. Inside, Oren's companions are gathered. The goggled girl notes that the three new Estrada knights, Barry, Kirk, and another, seem disappointed that they were unable to train upon their arrival. She dismisses their disappointment as unavoidable, explaining that the group's true purpose for coming to the lodging was to deliver a specific item to Grover, a simple, unadorned sword hilt. Handing the hilt to the knight, Grover Hurston, she asks him to use its identification number to find its owner. He understands the request and agrees to begin the investigation immediately. From his seat, Oren gives his assent, calmly telling the knight to please proceed with the task. As he accepts the order, the goggled girl notices Grover's suddenly pale complexion and asks him if something has happened. Jacqueline interjects, explaining that they received information about an unidentified group spotted near Estrada's border. The goggled girl reacts in shock, realizing the parallel to when Giadis attacked a heart. Jacqueline confirms that the location is concerning, especially coming so soon after Blitz and Elise's escape from Giadis. Grover then clarifies the official stance. He reports that while the Giadis Night Order is a strong possibility, it isn't certain. Estrada dispatched knights to investigate the sighting, but they found nothing, leading the kingdom to ultimately dismiss the report as false information. Jacqueline reasons that Giadis would logically try to retrieve important figures like Blitz before they could officially enter Estrada. The goggled girl adds a more worrying thought. The situation is worse if Giadis already knows that their group is present in Estrada. His hand striking the table, Oren cuts through the speculation. Addressing Grover directly, he declares that they cannot simply sit around and wait. He commands his large, winged mount to guide them to the location of the sighting. The creature soars over a barren, hilly landscape, carrying them toward the border. Upon landing, they find the area utterly tranquil. Jacqueline observes that there is absolutely nothing there, not even a suspicious group, let alone anyone at all. Oren silently agrees, surveying the peaceful scene. As the group walks the terrain, Oren notes that the grassland isn't trampled and there are no signs of a large number of people having been there. He theorizes they have either withdrawn or are hiding where they cannot be detected. Grover Hurston turns to him, stating that according to their map, the Deal River border is just ahead. He then asks Professor Oren for their next course of action. He concludes that staying will not change the outcome and suggests they head back. At that exact moment, a powerful magical pulse flashes between him and Jacqueline, startling them both. Oren immediately recognizes the sensation, stating that for a brief moment, he sensed intense magical power. Jacqueline confirms his assessment, remarking on the sheer amount of power they just felt. A confused Grover asks what is wrong. Jacqueline's expression becomes serious. She declares that the power is definitely Elise's. She reasons that if Elise is using her specialty, healing magic, it must mean she has been driven into a desperate situation. At this, Wendell lunges forward, only to be restrained by Grover. Wendell struggles, shouting that she needs to save Elise. Grover holds her back, warning that they are already near the border and causing problems in another territory would escalate into an international incident. Wendell calms, thanking him for cooling her head, before anxiously asking Oren what they should do now. His expression set with determination. Oren gives the group their new objective. They will locate Elise and Blitz. With their mission changed, the winged creature takes flight once more, soaring over a dense forest as it carries the group toward their friends. He and his companions soared through the sky, looking down at the vast expanse of water below. Wendell, peering over the edge of their winged mount, noted the river's impressive width. Jacqueline confirmed his observation, identifying it as the Deal River, the international border. He followed the river's path with his eyes, realizing it connected directly to Giadis. A thought struck him. Were the people they were tracking planning to cross this very river to enter the Estrada Kingdom? His eyes suddenly widened, having spotted them. Leaning precariously over the edge of the massive creature, he cupped his hands to his mouth and shouted down, "Over here!" Below, on the river's surface, a small boat carried a group of people, including Elise and Blitz. They all looked up, startled, as the great winged beast descended from the clouds. Patricia Grayson, among the refugees, stared in disbelief, recognizing not only Professor Oren, but also Wendell, Jacqueline, and even Grover. Aboard the familiar, Jacqueline expressed her immense relief that they were safe, with Wendell adding that they had been worried. Oren, however, remained focused, his gaze sharp as he took in the full scene. He noted that it wasn't just Blitz and Elise. They were escorting over 10 other people who had escaped Giadis with them. His attention zeroed in on the immediate danger. Blitz stood firm at the front of the boat, deflecting magical attacks with a glowing hexagonal barrier. Oren remarked to Elise that this was an emergency and they could savor the reunion later. In the distance, a pursuing vessel confirmed his fears. Giadis soldiers were closing in by boat. He processed the scene, a slight frown creasing his brow. It seemed strange. Against opponents of this level, he knew that Blitz alone should have been more than capable of suppressing them. His eyes then shifted to Elise, and the reason for their restraint became instantly clear. She was cradling a newborn baby, wrapped tightly in blankets. He understood at once. They had been avoiding an intense, all-out battle to keep the infant from harm. With a newfound understanding of their desperate situation, Oren called down with firm resolve, "Blitz!" From the boat below, the knight looked up, his expression a mix of exhaustion and hope, and shouted his reply, "Yes." Oren gave him a confident smile. "You did well," he assured him. "Leave the rest to me." Overwhelmed with relief, Blitz could only whisper, "Professor." As the emotional reunion unfolded, Jacqueline took charge, calling out to the refugees, "Everyone get on my familiar! Hurry over here." As they moved to evacuate the refugees, the pursuing Giadis soldiers shouted from their vessel, demanding they halt. Patricia, standing beside Oren, voiced her anxiety, warning that any retaliation could spark a conflict at the border. Oren, however, remained unconcerned, simply telling her not to worry. He then reached down, his fingers brushing the surface of the river. He noted that the waves were getting high, cryptically stating that a small accident was about to occur as Elise and Blitz watched from nearby. His words left Blitz utterly confused, the young knight muttering Oren's title in question. Before him, the waters of the river began to churn violently, swelling into a massive, unnatural wave. With a gesture from Oren, the colossal wave surged forward, crashing down with immense force directly upon the Giadis soldier's vessel, engulfing it completely. The immediate threat neutralized, Oren stood on the deck of their transport alongside Elise and Jacqueline. With water droplets still clinging to his hair, he turned to the rescued group and announced their next destination, a return to Roche Island. A knight from the opposing force groans in distress, overwhelmed by the sheer presence before him. He recognizes the immense pressure as the fabled power of Sage Oren Edwards. Facing this power, Blitz stands flanked by his allies, Jacqueline, Wendell, and Elise. He issues a severe warning to their pursuers. If they harm the people any further, they had better be prepared for the consequences. The helmeted commander of the opposing force clicks his tongue in frustration. With a look of intense reluctance, he bellows the order to retreat. Following the command, their ship turns and sails away from the shore. It's clear they wish to avoid unnecessary combat within another country's territory as much as possible. With the threat gone, Oren turns his attention to the gathered group of allies and refugees, asking if everyone is all right. They confirm that there are no problems. He smiles, relieved, and deflects the praise, stating that it's thanks to them for holding out until he arrived. As he expresses his gladness that things have settled down, Blitz approaches, thanking Professor Oren profusely and admitting he doesn't know what would have happened without his intervention. Blitz then turns to his other companions, expressing his gratitude to Elise, Jacqueline, and Wendell for their crucial support as well. Jacqueline closes her eyes with a gentle smile, assuring him they can be relied on any time. Wendell chimes in, asking if that's right, since they are friends and would of course help. Jacqueline confirms with a simple, "Exactly." Later, Oren discusses the plan with Grover Hurston, who informs him that the refugees will be given protection at the capital's monastery. Oren is relieved, noting that once there, even Giadis won't be able to touch them. Blitz and Grover formalize their cooperation, with Blitz stating they'll be in Grover's care, and Grover agreeing that he is counting on Blitz. Observing Oren's condition, Grover notes that he must be tired and looks awful, promising to arrange an audience with His Majesty so Oren can rest in the capital until then. He accepts their gratitude as Patricia thanks him profusely for his help. Oren interjects, stating their need to explain the situation to His Majesty before they depart for Roche Island. Noting the time it took to travel, Jacqueline urges them all to hurry. Following their urgent preparations, several days pass. The group, now including Holy Knight Blitz and Holy Maiden Elise, stands before the throne in the Grand Hall of the Estrada Royal Palace. They formally thank King Estrada for granting them an audience. The king, seated upon his throne, acknowledges their presence. He informs them that he has already heard everything from the senior knight, Grover, expressing his understanding that their recent decision must have been an unbearable one to make. He continues, explaining that Estrada cannot ignore the recent movements of the Jihadist kingdom. As a matter of fact, he reveals they have just recently captured a spy. The news catches Oren by surprise, who questions the king's statement. The king allows the senior knight to elaborate. James explains that the spy was a high-ranking individual within their own government, though it remains unclear whether this person was approached by jihadists or acted out of their own self-interest. The revelation stuns both Patricia and Oren, who struggle to believe such a thing could happen. The king, however, states that the truly shocking fact is yet to come, explaining that the spy guided the jihadist army and helped cover up the border attack with false information. He then delivers the most critical piece of intelligence. The nations of jihadists and Reason have officially formed a military alliance. The news sends a shockwave through the group. Oren is speechless. Wendell recalls that Reason is the very country where the princess disappeared. Elise admits she has a bad feeling about this development, while Jacqueline questions why jihadists would suddenly join forces with them. The king confirms that all this information was extracted during the interrogation of the captured spy. With a heavy expression, he declares it a grave situation. Beside him, Oren's face is etched with worry as he contemplates what this new alliance will mean for the world. The king's expression remains grave as he prepares to continue, beginning to address the assembly with the words, "Now then." He sits upon his throne and addresses Blitz and Elise directly, asking what they are seeking and what purpose they have moving forward. In response, Blitz declares their sole wish to spend time with their mentor and friends and to join the investigation of Roche Island. As they stand with Oren, their unity apparent, the king commands them to raise their heads. He observes their determined faces and remarks with a smile that they have good expressions. Having seen their resolve, he formally addresses them as Holy Knight Blitz and Holy Maiden Elise. He grants their wish, officially tasking them with unraveling the mysteries of Roche Island together with Oren. Elated by the official sanction, Blitz and Elise look up with bright, determined smiles and exclaim their acceptance. Their mission set, the group travels to their destination, a lone, forested island rising from the sea. Upon making landfall, Elise looks out from the beach where they have pulled their boat ashore, confirming that this is indeed Roche Island. Oren joins her, remarking that the place is known as the island that beckons disaster, and that it has a distinctly unusual atmosphere. He notes that she seems to feel it as well. He adds that he cannot shake the feeling that the island hides a great secret. Before he can elaborate, a cheerful voice calls out, welcoming them back. Turning toward the voice, they find Patricia and a young islander, Emu. Patricia expresses her relief that the professor and everyone are safe, while Emu cheers at the arrival of more people. She is met with a formal greeting from Blitz, who states he is looking forward to working with her. Beside them, the other young woman, brimming with energy, introduces herself as Emu. As Emu enthusiastically beckons them forward, Oren quietly notes her lively personality. Patricia, however, interjects, deciding it is enough with the greetings and that it is time to show them the village. She then gestures toward a large, impressive, newly built manor, declaring it to be both their home and the new home for the arriving party. Blitz expresses his awe at the splendid residence and village. Elise, meanwhile, is simply happy that they will all be living together. Patricia explains that while her group was investigating the island, craftsmen were advancing the construction. With a smile, she then suggests they see the farm next. Upon arriving at the farm, they are greeted by the sight of several people hard at work. A young woman with cat-like ears, Linda, looks up in surprise, recognizing Holy Knight Blitz and Holy Maiden Elise. She exclaims that with their arrival, the entire golden generation has finally gathered on the island. Nearby, the knight Kirk asks his companion, Barry, if his work is proceeding correctly. The nervous-looking Barry confirms it is, to which Kirk declares it perfect before asking for a status report on the farm. He holds up a crate of plants, reporting that they have received seedlings from the capital and are planning to plant them in the afternoon. Kirk then shifts the topic to the ranch. Linda enthusiastically adds that with the professor and the golden generation helping, they couldn't ask for more, and eagerly offers her own help as well. He continues, detailing the plans for the ranch. They are planning to build a stable with a Mr. Turner, while Mr. Donnell is currently negotiating for the livestock. Listening to the report, Kirk suggests to Oren that they will probably raise chickens and goats, reasoning that their smaller size is more practical for transporting by ship. He remarks to Elise that having chickens means they can harvest eggs, which is a huge benefit for their settlement. Elise agrees, observing that everyone is so enthusiastic. As their conversation continues, Patricia chimes in, telling Oren and Blitz that she's glad their energy is infectious. Blitz concurs, adding that he feels energized as well. Patricia continues, mentioning that she also saw herds of animals. Beside her, Lucia adds to the good news, reporting that she found a location yesterday abundant with fruit and wild vegetables. Oren raises a hand, hesitating for a moment before speaking. He declares their findings to be wonderful news. Oren lays out a plan. For now, they will gradually get a grasp of the situation in the immediate vicinity. Then, starting tomorrow, they will all go out to harvest the wild produce, hunt, and begin developing new areas in earnest. His planning is interrupted when he notices Emu standing silently nearby, a worried expression on her face. Now inside and having changed out his cloak, he turns to her and asks what is wrong. She addresses him as Professor, her expression grave. She delivers a stark warning. The day after tomorrow, a storm is coming to the island. The news catches him completely off guard, and he can only echo her words in disbelief. A torrential downpour lashes the island. Inside, Patricia Grayson watches the incredible rain through a window as Oren stands beside her. He remarks that reporting the situation to Estrada was the correct decision, as anyone caught at sea in this weather would surely perish. He then turns his attention to Emu, who is nearby. He acknowledges that her abilities are genuine, especially her uncanny talent for predicting this very storm. The events of 2 days prior flash through his mind. Emu had explained to him that while she couldn't articulate it well, the flow of the sky felt heavy, signaling an approaching storm. Their talk was cut short when a man from Pajal village urgently sought out Mr. Saruji, needing to speak with him. Oren then approached a muscular, two-tone-haired man, apologizing for the interruption but stressing that he had something vital to report immediately. Continuing the memory, Oren delivered the grave warning to the man. A storm would strike the island the day after tomorrow. He urged him to implement countermeasures without delay. His words met with a serious, focused expression. Back in the present, Oren explains to others how he knew about the storm's arrival. He reveals that Emu had told him the very same thing, confirming her prediction. The two-tone-haired man adds that some people in Pajal village can sense changes in the weather. He speculates that Emu must have awakened to that same ability, which Oren quietly considers. He finds this ability quite fascinating, noting that even advanced magic is incapable of predicting the weather. Nearby, Emu beams with happiness, exclaiming that she's glad to have become like everyone else in the village. Despite her joy, a practical concern weighs on Oren's mind. If what Emu and the others say is true, they cannot afford to be complacent. He wonders just how large this storm will be. Emu admits that she doesn't know that much. The two-toned-haired man, however, crosses his arms and offers a grim assessment, stating that while he can't be certain, the storms that hit this island are always ferocious. Taking this in, Oren looks at Emu with resolve. He tells her that they're going to be very busy from now on, and she looks back, ready to face the challenge. He looked at the island warrior, whose face was a mixture of sweat and disbelief. The warrior asked if Oren truly believed his warning. With a gentle, unwavering smile, Oren confirmed that he did, explaining that after seeing the expressions on both his and Emu's faces, he couldn't believe they were lying. His expression hardening with resolve, he declared that they must begin storm preparations immediately. Following his own command, Oren was soon seen working alongside Emu and another villager, hauling wooden planks to reinforce the structures against the looming bad weather visible on the horizon. Elsewhere, the rest of his companions also sprang into action. Elise and Patricia stood by, observing as Wendell and her associate worked diligently to secure their equipment. As the preparations continued, Oren conferred with Jacqueline and Blitz, pointing and giving directions to coordinate their efforts. Taking a moment, he turned to Emu, who stood near a window as the wind began to pick up. He asked her what the people of Pajal village typically do to handle a storm of this magnitude. Emu explained that they basically stay inside their houses, which are quite sturdy. The island warrior added that having lived in this land for so long, they have well-prepared countermeasures. Emu elaborated that when the rain and wind get truly severe, they evacuate to a nearby cave. Oren listened, realizing they had a sound survival plan. Patricia, overhearing the explanation, was taken aback. She commented that for those raised in Giadis, a storm like this would feel like the end of the world. Emu, however, calmly stated that she didn't think the villagers would panic. Despite the reassurance, Patricia still voiced her worry for the people of Pajal village. Nearby, Wendell noted that if storms of this scale become regular, they'll have to watch out for other natural disasters too. Elise somberly agreed, adding that this seems to be just the beginning. Sensing her anxiety, Oren turned to Patricia and told her not to worry. He revealed that Jacqueline had already cast reinforcement magic on the mansion, assuring her there was nothing for them to worry about regarding their own safety. Inside the reinforced mansion, Lucia expresses her admiration for Jacqueline's magic, calling it precise and beautiful. Patricia, standing beside her, agrees with enthusiasm, stating that with Jacqueline's abilities, they have nothing to worry about. Listening to their exchange, Oren reflects internally. He finds it reassuring to have more magic specialists on hand and notes how helpful it has been that Jacqueline has recently been teaching magic to both Patricia and Lucia. This sentiment is echoed by Wendell, who remarks with a smile that she never expected Jacqueline to become such a caring person. Elise adds that it's as if Jacqueline has gained 2 younger sisters. From a nearby couch, Jacqueline retorts that she can hear Wendell's teasing. Meanwhile, cooped up elsewhere by the storm, Emu lies sprawled out in frustration. With a heavy sigh, she wishes for the rain to stop, desperate to get back to her training. As she laments, Orin stands inside the mansion, his preparations complete. He acknowledges they have done everything possible and can only hope the storm passes without incident, musing that for someone like Emu, this confining weather is a kind of natural enemy. He turns his gaze to the window, watching as the torrential rain continues to lash against the glass. The next morning, the storm has completely passed. Under a bright, clear sky, Emu throws her arms up in celebration, shouting that it has cleared up. Beside her, Patricia marvels that it feels as if the previous day's tempest was just a lie. While the younger members of the group celebrate, Orin maintains a more serious demeanor. He instructs Claire to hurry and assess the damage, thinking to himself that the adults cannot yet afford to be in such a good mood. Claire responds with a determined yes and rushes off. Soon after, his team reports back to him around a table. Donald informs the group that the damage to the port is extremely minor, with no urgent repairs needed. Orin smiles, relieved, and credits the positive outcome to Turner and Kirk for their hard work in the limited time they had. Turner adds to the good news, reporting that the farm also sustained no notable damage, to which Kirk expresses his delight. As he continued to oversee the post-storm recovery, one of his companions, the engineer Wendell, approached him. Addressing him as professor, she began to report on her survey of the island, her sentence trailing off. Orin, accepting a drink she offered, thanked her for her kindness. Her expression then turned serious as she delivered the core of her report. She was certain a landslide had occurred, having discovered a wide area deep in the forest where many trees had fallen. He listened intently, agreeing that the situation was troublesome. If the path was obstructed, he mused, it would surely hinder their plans for future development on the island. Without hesitation, he declared that they should go investigate the site right away. Their destination was a vast, densely forested mountainside. Upon arriving, the group was met with a scene of devastation. A wide swathe of the forest was completely blocked by a chaotic jumble of uprooted trees and displaced earth, prompting Orin to remark on the terrible sight. While Claire Sandgert eagerly volunteered to help clear the debris, Jacqueline stepped forward with a more strategic approach. She announced her intention to use detection magic to survey the surroundings and asked Patricia to assist her. Working in tandem, the two mages conjured a magical map of the island. Jacqueline explained that the landslide was caused by soil flowing down from the central mountain. She added that she couldn't sense any monsters in the area, which Orin found reassuring. His relief was short-lived. Jacqueline countered that, conversely, the complete absence of monsters in such a vast forest was unnatural. Orin considered her words and conceded that it was a good point. As Jacqueline voiced her suspicion, Patricia chimed in with her own unsettling discovery. She explained that while she wasn't sure if it was related, she had sensed something off, a sensation she described as a gaping empty space located deep within the forest. Her strange description immediately captured his full attention. Alarmed, Orin looked directly at Patricia and questioned her finding, a space. He concludes that it can't be helped. They must investigate the landslide area directly. Acknowledging that detection magic has its limits, he states that the details of what's actually there need to be confirmed with their own eyes. He and Patricia press forward through the dense foliage, heading toward the site of the disturbance. Suddenly, Patricia's voice cuts through the air. Having found the source, she calls out for the professor and everyone else to join her. Before them is a massive, dark maw in the earth, the unmistakable entrance to a dungeon. Patricia confirms that this is definitely the empty space she had sensed. Orin quickly deduces that the entrance must have been buried underground, only appearing because of the recent landslide. Jacqueline observes that, given the island's size, the existence of a dungeon isn't particularly strange. Her companion, however, seems thrilled by the discovery, exclaiming that it's kind of exciting. Seeking more information, Orin calls out to Patricia, who immediately affirms her readiness. He asks for her assessment of the dungeon. As Patricia focuses her senses, Jacqueline murmurs that she has never seen one that goes so deep. Patricia reports her findings, her voice strained. The dungeon is so vast that if she continues to use her detection magic, her head will start spinning. She concludes that conquering it would likely take a very long while. Hearing this, Elise asks about adventurers. Patricia explains that, simply put, they are specialists in dungeon conquest. The implication is clear to Orin, who realizes they might need to dispatch such specialists to handle this. He stood before the gaping maw of the dungeon, considering the immense challenge ahead. He voiced his conclusion aloud, stating that for this particular dungeon, they would not succeed unless they enlisted a person or a party with a proven track record. In response to his assessment, Claire Sandgert offered a suggestion. With a confident expression, she asked about recruiting a specific man she had in mind. He confirmed that he had been thinking the exact same thing. Nearby, Jacqueline, the Witch of 1,000 Faces, overheard their exchange, her eyes widening in surprise at the coincidence. He then specified the person he intended to contact, stating with a smile, "Let's ask Loretta." His suggestion was met with confusion. Emu immediately asked who he was talking about, while Patricia was left speechless and